Hello.
No.
Welcome to another, I was going to say Bad Batch, but Book of Boba Fett live
Book of BAND
stream,
BATCH.
Book of Boba Fett music and sound discussion. Um we're very excited to talk about this episode, chapter 4. Oh,
Oh yeah.
oh, it says chapter 3 up here. Let me change that right now. We're very excited to talk about chapter 4 today. What's it called? The Gathering Storm?
Yep.
Yeah.
We can. By the way, we can just call ourselves the flannel panel from now on.
Oh my
Um,
god. Oh my gosh. Well, okay. Um, what did you? First of all, how are you all?
Good. Hey, Justin, how
How?
are you? Oh, Justin is mute.
Oh, Justin, is Justin? Justin is muted. Wait, did
Justin
I
took a
mute
vow of
Justin?
silence. I don't know.
I don't know. I have a message that says that I muted the guest, but I definitely didn't. So
Unmute the guest. Mute the
anyway,
guest.
I guess Justin's
Unmute
not
the
here
guest.
anymore. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know what happened to Justin.
Can you
It
unmute
says
him?
guest has muted themselves.
Oh, okay. Is the mute button on your thing, Justin?
Justin, rejoin.
Yeah, just come back on.
So now that Justin's gone, what did you think of chapter 4? Just high level thoughts, like
Yeah.
in
Um.
yeah.
So, in a lot of ways,
Am I back?
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and we can hear you.
Awesome.
Woo!
Okay.
I very much enjoyed chapter 4. Up front, I enjoyed it holistically more than I think than most episodes. Maybe episode 2. Maybe I enjoyed equally or more. I thought everything kind of was being things started to pull together for this episode for me, and it felt more like things are starting to pay off a little bit more. Um, so it just with the score, with the connections and things that are being fleshed out character wise and story wise, this feels more like what I guess I expected this show was going to be more of.
Mm-hmm.
Really filling in gaps and really showing us, Boba's kind of placing some dominoes. That's what it felt like. I mean, even just minimally, you actually saw Boba seemingly like he's got some type of strategy or plan this episode, or some type of direction, or going forward. Yeah, those are my high level thoughts. Or yes, I enjoyed it.
You,
I'm a
Justin?
fan.
I'm mixed about this episode, to be honest. There are parts that I really, really liked, and then there were parts that kind of confused me more. To be honest, I kind of came out with more confusion,
Mhm.
personally kind of
Hmm.
thing. Um, but I thought musically, the score was really starting to come together in ways that we haven't really heard in the previous
Mm.
episodes.
For
Um,
Like
sure.
what?
for me, it was, and I know it's not exclusively this episode that does this, but I felt like there was more theme placement, like during scenes, not just during a moment, like epic moment kind of a thing, but like we heard a lot of like all of Boba's themes has so many themes,
Yeah.
um, in really like nicely underscored moments, be it actiony or be it kind of like just with Fennec and Boba talking, um, which I thought was kind of nice. And then something I'm sure we'll talk about, a musical cameo, which I thought was very
Oh yeah.
interesting. Very
Very
interesting. But yeah, I liked a lot and was just confused a little bit longer for me.
Fair enough. Well,
What
only 3
about you,
episodes
Xanthe?
left. I think
What do you think, Xanthe?
this was probably my favorite episode so far,
Yeah.
just because I know more about what's happening, and like I think I'm starting to have my questions answered that I had
Mm.
about motivations.
Totally.
And and with Fennec in particular.
Yeah. Which that's kind of a weird thing for them to have as like something to be revealed in the show. Like, what are the main characters' motivations for everything they're doing for the first 3 episodes? And it's like they made that as kind of like a reveal. It's like, which doesn't seem that dramatic of a question. In fact, it made us kind of scratch our heads for 3 episodes. Instead of us feeling like, ooh, what's their motivation? Why are they doing this? It's kind of, I don't know. Have you ever seen the movie Memento? You know that movie Memento, right?
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah.
Remember how like the spoilers, y'all. But hey, Jonah. Remember in that movie, like that's a movie where the character's motivation becomes clear at the end, but it's like there's so much mystery already surrounding it. You don't feel confused by it. It's almost like it is a payoff where you're like, that's why the character has been doing this the whole time. So far in this episode or in this show, it's kind of like they that dangling thread is kind of led us here to episode 4, but it kind of made us question our enjoyment for the last 3 episodes in many ways. We're like, it's like, is this making any sense? It's like it didn't seem like a question that we were excited to hear the answer to. We were like, why haven't they told us it yet? You know? So I think that was
wonder why or if we'll get more thematic material for for Fennec.
Yeah. Because we didn't. And actually, there is a little melody I wanted to bring up today that I was confusing, and I don't remember it. And it seemed to be tied to Fennec in some way.
Yeah,
I wanted to know
I
if
was
you
going to bring that up
noticed it.
too, especially since Jonah's here.
Yeah. So can I play that melody real quick to talk about it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Okay.
please.
So I mean, this I probably miss. It just seemed to be these intervals that I heard twice, specifically in the desert scenes, and it was this. Is this what you're talking about, Xanthe? It was like something like along the lines of something like that, and then it was played on a guitar while they're talking when Fennec wakes up, and it's also it's played earlier when he like discovers her, which is interesting. Which I'm curious at what that theme is. I don't remember. It seemed to be like a very specific thematic choice that has a through line somewhere, and I don't remember hearing that in any other episode anywhere. Did you hear that, or did that go unnoticed?
I did hear it, but I'm not sure how. I'm still not sure if it's something.
How to interpret it,
how,
right?
Which is like how I feel about a lot of these little themes or little, I guess, pieces of music that come up. It's kind of hard it's hard for me to discern whether it is like something to pay attention to or like an accident. So Jonah tweeted something to me that I checked out, and I'll read it to you. So Jonah, first of all, thank you. I checked it out after you tweeted that to me, just to make sure. Because honestly, Jonah, you have really good ears. You pick up on some random stuff that one would only know if they really knew this music really well.
Yeah.
Okay, so Jonah said Fennec and Boba, the track.
And let me by the way, let me just give a timestamp so people watching later. It's at 5.
That's great.
5 for this melody is 5:40 when Boba is discovering Fennec, okay, on the ground, and then it plays when they're talking when she wakes up later on a guitar. And it's in a different. It's transposed to a different key when it reappears, and it yeah. Try to find that
like right before the
around
card?
11 minutes or so when they're chatting is when it reappears this little, and it's very like purposefully brought back. It's like, so pretty interesting.
It is interesting. See, the reason I think I'm not sure about that is because it also is like a setup for, it's like a preparation for a tonic or something. Like,
Yeah.
or what is it? What is it?
It's like so if we're calling that the root, it's like root flat 2, flat 6.
Yeah, like this.
And then to the 5th. Yeah.
And I'm curious if the next thing is this.
It doesn't seem to. I didn't hear it.
Okay.
If it did.
Okay.
Maybe
I'm gonna do it right now. Is that 6 minutes?
5 minutes and 40 seconds.
Okay. Okay. You can't hear it because copyright, but I'm. Yep, it goes.
Oh, when we go
title.
to the theme, right?
Yeah. The second time, I'll have to look at that later. It might.
But
not
either
the
way,
second
it's
time.
like the way that it's arpeggiated is specifically that way.
Like it's
not even
always
like,
voiced in that order.
Yeah, so it's not just like chord changes. It's like an actual like little motif, you know.
Yeah.
So.
Well, Jonah, have you heard that before? Jonah's like has a good handle on the Mandalorian
get on it, Jonah.
soundtrack too.
Go.
So
go Gadget Jonah. Go.
Okay, cutting room floor. We'll get to your comment in a second. I'm gonna actually read Jonah's tweet now.
I have a very funny observation about the mod thing that I'm wondering if anybody else made a connection about the mod music. But yeah, go ahead.
Okay,
Xanthe, sorry.
So Jonah tweeted Fennec and Boba from 23 seconds to 109 on the soundtrack has material from the Mandalorian episode 5 soundtrack. The tracks are Night Riders at 124 and 306 and the beginning of The Hangar in chapter 5.
Yeah, we're talking about because it's runs corresponding to that episode, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's another one of those like really silly things where Jonah, first of all, I 100% hear what you're picking up on, and okay, so in Night Riders, so in Mandalorian, it's you can most clearly hear it at the beginning of The Hangar, but it's slowed down there, so it's a little bit the rhythm's not quite there, but yeah, and then it's in thirds. It's whatever. It's okay. The point is,
so it does
one,
lean
two,
on me
three,
for a second
4,
there.
1,
Yeah.
2.
Or the Rugrats theme.
Should have just stopped. I should have. Okay, it's. And then later on in the track, it goes. I wrote this out because. Okay, so it's pretty much the same thing, and it goes. I'll do it an octave higher. So.
There's the lick for a second there.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because the lick is it a motif? At this point, yes, it can be used intentionally as a motif, but it's also just shows up randomly when people aren't even trying, and that's like why it's so funny. So it's one of those things where you can never tell if it's intentional.
Just to be clear, everybody, if you would just go Google or on YouTube the lick, and it's a motif that has made its way mostly in a lot of jazz, but all over the place. And you just type in the lick. You can even type the lick melody or the lick jazz or something. You'll find the video that I'm talking about, and it's basically that melody, and it shows up in that was totally in that motif there. Anyway, sorry, I'm very distracted today.
In The Hangar, it's and then it's a little bit different, and then so that was all Mandalorian, and to me that sounds it's weird that it keeps popping up, but it's all the same episode, so whatever. But then we get to Boba Fett. It's this 4, 3, 4, And so there, do you hear the slight difference? Instead of like, if I can in Book of Boba, it does it in multiple places. So it's not just, then it goes, and then it also goes, nope. And so it kind of does that thing in a lot of places. And it's not exactly the same, but the shape is the same. Can you hear the one difference?
Sure, of course.
Elaborate.
Yes.
The one difference, I mean, there's like a note missing basically in the in the second.
Yeah. Well, it's a flatted note.
How do you feel about it?
I'm not sure yet, because the very first thing, okay, just to make sure we're taking viewers with us, the difference is
yeah, go ahead and play it for them.
Yeah. So in Mandalorian, it's, and the notes are, and in Book of Boba, it's, so.
And I think,
yeah.
And I think that's that's really interesting, because that's that interval right there is within the Boba theme, right? Boom, part of it's part of his main title theme, right? That what do you call it? What'd you say?
I don't hear what you're hearing.
Yeah, let me just remind myself of where in the theme that interval happens, because it's what I'm sorry. What Xanthe? What note are you starting on for that theme?
I'm starting on C, but if we did it in the key of the,
yes.
So if we convert it to the main, it would.
Right. So.
No. I'm wrong.
Yeah, but
it goes in so many, like, it's 0, 1, 3, 4.
I just want to hear it real quick. Can you just do it on C again?
0, 1, 3, 4.
0, 1, 3, 4. You said?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Chat, what do you think? Are we just losing our minds?
Yeah, but that's totally a part of the.
Oh, that one. Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, totally. But it's not starting on the C though. It's starting on the second note, like the second interval.
So
okay, James, can you play?
See that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but can you play the Boba theme that you're playing? Because I don't hear the I mean, I hear a similarity, but I don't hear that it's in that. Yeah, but now play the Boba theme. No, that's not the Boba theme.
Yeah.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
You're
picking up. I think you're picking up on just the flat top note, and it's in a different. There's an extra cramped interval. You just added an augmented interval. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Right?
And it's the same pitch set.
Yeah.
Okay.
Same pitch set right there. Ada, what do you call it?
Okay, now I hear what you're saying. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So anyway, that's here, and I think it's worth tracking.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting that, I mean, as we just determined, it's in this pitch set, so it's like almost using a pitch set thematically, you know, as long as it's within this range, as long as within these notes, it can kind of represent that mood-wise, tonally, kind of a thing.
I mean, it
I
would
feel like
make
that's
sense in a track called Fennec and Boba.
yeah.
Right.
I don't remember what's happening in the episode when Night Riders plays or the Hangar. Actually, I think one of them plays when
Well, if it's called the
Boba-
hangar, I mean, it's happening while he's back in that hangar.
Okay, maybe. But I should mention, like, the end of Night Riders goes into the beginning of the Hangar, so it probably
That's
is kind
true.
of a continuation in the episode. But I think part of it is when Fennec is, like, with the gunslinger, with the, like, kid,
Right.
and they're, like, watching, they're just, like, hanging out there, because she's trying to convince him to go after Mando, to wait for Mando, to capture Mando instead. And I think that's where that is. I don't know. I'm pretty sure. So, I don't think it was when, like, Boba was picking her up at the end, because that would have made a lot of sense.
Well, so there's. I don't want to. I want to stay on this melody thing because there's also something specifically about that moment that I definitely want to talk about on today's stream.
Okay,
that I wanted everyone's opinion on, but
Mm.
there's definitely something. There's definitely some crossover stuff going from that specific not post credit, but I guess it kind of functioned that way. It was right before the credits, Stinger scene, Mando episode, that they have recycled and reused very specifically for Book of Boba Fett, which I find kind of interesting.
Maybe it is when, I don't know.
It might be.
I guess I meant. Oh, okay. Wait. Oh no, that's what we were already talking about. It's the thing you brought up. I don't know. It's a big mystery, but it's probably not. It'll probably be revealed at some point, just like Rampart's theme.
Right.
So the reason I'm not sure how I feel about it yet is only because, like, I do think it's a thread worth following. So thank you, Jonah. But whenever there's similarities, or whenever I hear similarities in music, or someone points out a similarity in the music, the first thing I want to do is check where that happens, because if it's a theme, then it might be apparent from the material that it's associated with, Okay. Jonah says it plays when Mando and the gunslinger go after Fennec.
Mando
during
and
the
the
night.
gunslinger.
And when Fennec...
But by the way, y'all, that gunslinger has a name, and it's Toro Calican, okay? Can we put some respect on Toro's name, okay? By the way, he made an appearance in this episode.
Wait, did he?
He did?
Yeah, his flash in the night sky. Toro Calican was.
I thought
in
that
this
was
episode.
Mando.
Oh.
Who knows? All I know is that I'm just waiting for that.
It was Mando's flash, not Toro's.
I'm just waiting for that terribly cheesy character to reappear somewhere. So anyway.
Okay, and it plays when Fennec tries to coerce him. Yeah, like when they're chilling outside. In Boba, it plays when she sends her droids into the palace. So
I'm listening right now.
Yeah, so I guess it's probably, like, at this point, I would consider it maybe an incidental motif. I wouldn't consider it like a light motif. I'd consider it an incidental motif.
Yeah. I hear it. Yeah.
So
sneaky.
Yeah. And it's now, I hope we hear it, like, all over the place now, because it's also just like, it's pretty common string writing, or it's not like out of the ordinary for string writing, but because it's repeated so much, like, the more times it's repeated, the more attention, like, we have to give it.
Right.
Like, it's probably the more it's played.
It's like, hey, this is a thing. I'm a thing.
Something.
Please listen to me.
Yeah.
I mean something.
Unless it's so much that then it's like, oh no, that's just his style.
Yeah.
So that's why it's always good to go back to the source material to be like, well, can we draw a connection? And so far, the connection is tenuous thematically, unless you see something very... I mean, it could just be Fennec in tension scenes or something, but yeah. So we have a bot, and I'm banning them. Okay, great.
Vomong. I was gonna say Vomong actually.
Yeah.
So I want to bring this up, and I thought a lot about this, and I realized that like I haven't seen any other Star Wars content creators talking about what I'm about to talk about, and I figured this is the show that actually needs to dissect this part. And I know as soon as I bring this up, Xanthe's just gonna dismiss everything I say, and and it's gonna act like it doesn't matter, that I'm just whatever. I'm just a big nothing. No, anyway. So okay. So all right. I really want to actually dissect this just to be nerds about it. Okay. Okay. Because this is the show that celebrates Star Wars through music and sound.
James. Yes.
All right. I'm glad I set it up. Okay. All right. So do you remember? Picture yourself back in 2019 watching The Gunslinger for the first time, okay?
I was in bed.
The episode. Okay. And you're watching that, not post-credit scene, but it's whatever, pre-credit scene, the end scene, where the person that we didn't know and the internet exploded. Who is that? But there was 2 clues.
Yes,
there
were.
Clues.
I'm so glad we're talking about this because I wanted to talk about it too.
Yes.
On the count of 3. 1. Wait.
Oh, no, I'll just let you know.
No, I want
to. No. What are the 2 clues? Go for it. What are the 2 clues that we got that told us? And I'm so sad that we didn't have a show back then, because we would have
Well, I was only gonna say one main thing. I was gonna say one thing. I just want to know if we're thinking of the same thing. So I want to say it at the same time. So, okay, but you have 2 things. So pick one of your things that you.
Okay, go. 1, 2, 3, 4. The
Spurs.
Boots.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. So that's the main thing, is the boot spurs. Okay. Yeah. But there's one other thing. Do you remember?
No.
You don't remember it? Do you remember, Justin? There's one other sound. It's his radio helmet that we hear in Empire Strikes Back. So way back when, in The Gunslinger, there's 2 things that told us that person that goes up and finds Fennec is Boba Fett. And people on the internet were blowing up like, is that Boba Fett? And it was so clear to anyone that actually cares about sound, because it's like,
that's not true. I care about sound, and I didn't. Okay. Oh, you're right. Okay. I need to shut up. Okay.
But okay, and this is the point. It's like, yeah, I know that you were not willing to jump to conclusions, but anyone, like, it was so clear what they're trying to do. Like, it's like, we're not morons. It's the same sound. It's the same exact sample of his boot spurs from Empire Strikes Back. When he's walking up to Fennec, it's that sound, right? And same thing with his radio helmet, you find it in Empire Strikes Back. So anyway, point is that it was very clear, like, it wasn't clear, but it was like, when you drew like the possibilities of what they're trying to tell you at that moment, you're like, there's nobody but Boba Fett that they could be trying to tell us, unless they're like being mean to us, right? It's like they're being mean to us by giving us the exact boot spur sound and the radio helmet. If it wasn't Boba Fett, it's just like, thanks, Lucasfilm, like, for making us get all excited. Okay. Anyway, point is they put those sounds into that episode, and that's like, we could decide, like, is that Foley or is that score, right?
Well, definitely not score.
No, and this is what this is. Okay, this is what's bringing me to the next thing. Okay, is that you don't hear that sound. Now we're 2 years later, and we're watching Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah.
2 years later, and the Book of Boba Fett. But Boba doesn't have boot spurs. Like, he hasn't been making those sounds in the desert throughout this entire show. Okay? And he definitely doesn't have a helmet on that's capable of making radio sounds. Okay?
He doesn't have any of the stuff.
He doesn't have any of those things. So what's making those noises when he's walking up to Fennec, right? And they put it into the scene again. They'd replay the scene in this episode, and they show him, and they clang, 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 and they actually show the Mandalorian footage. Like, that's the actual footage. And it almost took me out of it, because it's like, it's very clear that whoever is wearing, like, that's not the same outfit that Tim Morrison is wearing in the Book of Boba Fett, but it's fine. It's dark, and it's like, you're splitting hairs. But here's the thing. He's not wearing boots that are making spur sounds, and he's not wearing a helmet that's making radio sounds. So what's making those sounds, right? And this is what I wanted to nerd out about, is like, is it canon that those sounds even happened, or is that's why I'm asking. Maybe it's some weird. At this point, we might have to view it as score because it's not Foley.
I don't think sounds are canon. By the way, I think scores are part of the narrative aspect. I don't.
This is the kind of nerdy thing I wanted to talk about right now, which is like, is that canon that he made those sounds, right? Is it canon that that the radio sound was something like, what's canon? Because I think what the intent was is that they were trying to portray this as Boba Fett, and maybe even he was wearing his armor at that point. But they had since changed their mind on that by season 2 when Cobb Vanth actually had his armor, right? So, what do we think?
Does Cobb Vanth will have spur sounds, by the way?
I think he. Oh, we should go watch it.
Yeah.
Jonah, go. I don't know.
I don't know for certain. I know that Boba Fett was designed to have spur sounds because they wanted him to sound like a cowboy.
Right.
But I haven't really kept track of the spurs ever since. Just haven't.
No, exactly. But I can tell you, I when I heard that in this episode, I was thinking about this. I went back and listened. He doesn't make those sounds when he walks in that outfit anywhere else except for that scene, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But also, sound design is such, like, I mean, this is top of mind because I was listening to Ben Burt interviews this morning for the main podcast. And there was an interview where he was saying that, like, sound design is not reality. Sound design is it has its own language, just like music does. And there's a certain there's a certain movie sound design language that's specific to, like, what things you play up and how you manipulate sounds in order to affect emotions.
We talked about that with Band Batch a lot, like especially when they have the tinnitus or they have the, we had the, like, oh, you would hear all these other sounds, but they chose to highlight this one sound
exactly.
effect,
So when we hear the boots, like that, to me that feels. I mean, if there's no tree in the forest or whatever, if no one's hearing the tree in the forest,
right?
But I can't help but, like, they definitely. I remember there was also a close up on the boots, so, like, I can imagine when other things are happening, or like maybe a wider shot, you might not hear the boots so much. But then again, you might hear the boots. Think of, like, if we heard the boots with a super wide shot, like, obviously that doesn't mean, like,
I see what
the
you're
viewer
saying.
are as far as the camera is. We're something
so
else.
You're saying that he's been clanking his boots this whole time, but they just didn't choose to highlight it?
It's possible. Like,
Okay.
like, for example, if someone has, like, a loud chewing sound or something, you might not only hear it in, like, a close up of their mouth or something.
And they're like, the Tuscans are like, dude, we, like, hide our numbers in single file, and you're walking around with these loud freaking boots. Like, dude, can you not be giving away our cover here, please? Thank you.
Well, this is after that.
Are the spurs for the Banthas?
Oh yeah, but where do you get the boots? Where do you get the boots? Where do you get the boots? Right? Boot, the Tatooine boot outlet, like.
Hey, they got all sorts of things on Tatooine, apparently.
Apparently.
We had no clue.
They
where
also have
the bootmonger.
Apparently they listen to a lot of. They listen to the Prodigy quite a bit on Tatooine. Anyway, so go for it, Justin.
No, that's interesting though, especially, like, if they gave us those. I mean, whether it's canon score or not, the fact that they gave us those clues back in Mandalorian,
right,
to kind of have us figure it out. Those who were like, oh, we know what that is. And then to, like, make such a direct correlation with that episode for this episode, where it was almost like, okay, this is what happened in that episode. The thing went there. Right. All these things. It's funny that they didn't put that into this episode. And now, especially that you're saying there's the radio helmet sound.
The radio helmet.
That one is weird to me. Like,
yeah, he has no. There's anything, right?
And that's why I'm like, the radio helmet is score. That's score.
Well, I don't think score. I don't know. It's not score. It's part of this. It's all part of the soundtrack. But I think, like, there's an axis that's canon to not canon. Then there's also another one that's diegetic to non-diegetic. I think it's something that's imported into the soundtrack. Into the soundtrack of the film or show. But
someone that
score
performed
is something specific.
Someone that performed John Cage's speech, which is scored for 8 tunable radios. I'm gonna make the point that this was a score. They actually
James, because score doesn't mean, like, It doesn't
I'm just
matter.
kidding,
Oh.
Xanthe.
It's the
Anyway.
Foley score. No, but that's weird. That's interesting that they would do that.
Jonah.
Or not do that.
Jonah.
Cobb has spurs.
Cobb has spurs.
Yeah. See? This is why I love our audience.
This is the
Cobb has spurs.
we need honestly, James needs a fact check just like on him at all times.
Oh yeah, I do. Yeah, sure. Okay.
I'm just kidding.
Oh, okay. Did I do that right? All right, anyway.
Okay.
All right, anyway. So anyway, I want to bring this up. I'm happy we talked about it. It's kind of silly. Because here's the thing: is when you divorce yourself of the minutia, you realize like the reason why they put those 2 sound bites was for very 2 simple reasons: to make the audience think, "Oh my God, we're gonna get Boba Fett in the future." Like this is the only reason. Like there's no canon reason. There's not like we get all up, like the up in the uppity, about this, right? That's the only 2 reasons they weren't like and they were like, okay, but now we've decided that Boba Fett didn't have his boots on and he didn't have his armor. We're not going to worry about it, and those are the real reasons that sound existed 2 years ago. Now we have to dissect it, right? Like the radio helmet was there for that reason, and they decided, hey, it's much more interesting if he didn't have his armor because Mando finds it, whatever. Anyway.
And so that was before we met Cobb Vanth. So as of then, it probably would have been the only like spur thing we had heard. And then
by the way, I checked
like hearing
in
Cobb Vanth
in the score, like there's that spur sound in the score
in the soundtrack?
to Book of Boba Fett, in the Book of Boba Fett, and it is the exact same spur sample as from the Mandalorian and from Empire Strikes Back. The spur like makes its way into the score, actually the score. Like
what
rhythmically with I'm not super familiar with the soundtrack track names yet.
So
I can tell you
so it's not like
where it happens. I can tell you where it happens in the episode. So it's in with the score. So it's definitely part of the score.
And it doesn't correspond with footsteps or anything. It's like used as a percussion instrument.
Nope. Yep.
Oh,
exactly.
oh. I heard that too.
So it happens. I'll tell you exactly where. So he finds Fennec at like 5 minutes or whatever. 5. Yeah, it's right on the title when the title appears. Gathering Storm 5:53 or whatever. Ban dicka ching ching dun 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 dicka ching ching dun dun. Right?
Yeah.
It
sounds like Christmas bells or something.
That is the sample. That's the spur sample.
That's cool. Is it on previous episodes? No.
And that's what I believe it is, actually. I believe they've been using it all along, actually.
Oh, that would make sense. Yeah.
Yeah, it's that it's been the chinking, clinging in the background this whole time. Huh.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's cool.
Yeah.
Jonah says, "I'm your wiki." Jonah, you're much more than a wiki. You're a spider ear, spidey sense. So that actually was an interesting discussion. Thank you, James, for bringing it up.
Yeah, come on.
I was never a hater. You just thought I was going to be.
I know, but it's kind of a running joke that you're the hater and I'm I'm the golden retriever.
Now that I get the joke, I'll play along.
Okay.
So the Spurs, it's the fact that no one has talked about it, or I'm sure people have talked about it, but James alleges that he has not heard other people talk about it. I think
I know that people have talked about the Spurs. I know that people have been talking about the Spurs from Mandalorian. I haven't heard anyone talk about this episode of Boba Fett and the fact that we now know that like the Spurs and the radio helmet don't make quote unquote sense with what we know as canon.
Like juxtaposing it with.
Yeah. That's what I'm talking about. It's like no one has pointed out that radio helmet sound no longer makes any sense. Yeah. So.
But it's sort of like when we get shots from like previous films, but it's from maybe a different angle or like there's some extra thing in it, which helps with matching up timelines and everything. I don't know. But honestly, that is interesting. I'm going to be thinking about that more than expected. So let's talk about what Cutting Room Floor says, which is the mod parlor music. Controversial. I actually haven't heard any controversy about it.
I've seen some people think that the music sounded, out. It's the classic thing that doesn't sound like Star Wars.
I mean,
that's
it kind of sounded like a dig on the Matrix soundtrack for a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I have a very specific thing that it sounds like to me, and I'd love people to go check out. Anyway, I'll get there.
What? First of all, the most direct comparison that I can make in terms of the Book of Boba Fett is this compared to the last episode during the speeder chase, when we also heard a what do we call this music? Like
drum and bass.
Drum and bass music.
Drum and bass beat. Yeah.
Yeah, and for me, those two scenes, the one from chapter 3 and the one from chapter 4, came off completely different.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think this track is a banger.
No, this was great.
Yeah. I have to say, I'm just gonna go ahead and say this, that now that they've released a soundtrack, I went back and listened to the chase scene, and I like it way more as just its own track without all the extra, diegetic sounds like in it. It's in some ways like the rest of the sound design involved muffles a lot of the things that are actually going on in that scene, to the point where like the only thing I could pick out was like, some of the low bassy tones in the drum and bass thing from last episode. And now that I can hear the soundtrack, I'm like, oh, there's like all these like other things going on, and it just gets buried in the sound in the sound design actually.
I was thinking about that listening to the soundtrack as a whole. I found myself enjoying it much more than I enjoyed most of that music in the actual episodes.
Right.
But that's not it's not unexpected, I don't think, because I mean, when we're talking about whether or not we liked music in a spot, it's never about the music itself as this pure like the music. It's always like the context in which it shows up. And
Absolutely.
For me, like, I was enjoying a lot of the Book of Boba Fett soundtrack, but a lot of it didn't feel, it like didn't make me feel great when watching the episodes. Some of them, and it's like maybe a style mismatch or like a taste thing, or just for whatever reason. And the speeder chase is an excellent example. Like, I always think like the difference between me liking part of the soundtrack and not is just, it can be as simple as changing it from non-diegetic to diegetic. If you made that speeder chase music into like a jukebox tune, or like you made it diegetic instead of part of the score, I would have seen it in a completely different light. And I think the mod parlor music was a banger too. And what I liked even better probably was the music as he was walking into the mod parlor.
Yeah.
Where that was clearly diegetic and worldized.
Oh yeah.
And so we were hearing it come from the inside of the parlor.
Justin, what do you think about that?
I just wanted to say I watched this scene a couple times. One, because the music was great, was part of it, and I just want to keep hearing it. But I really had this kind of question about it being diegetic or not for me, because the music, there's two separate things that happen with this music. There's the music that he's walking up to, which is this kind of chill jazz. I agree, but it sounded like that. But then the moment he opens the door, it's completely different music. It's completely different music. It's sound designed to sound like it's coming from like behind the wall. You just kind of hear the bass, and
we call that what do you call that,
Justin?
Is that a low pass filter that they
that would be like it's cutting off the lows. It's making it sound like it's behind a door. It's the classic club, like as you open up and everyone starts partying. But the music is super different as he walks in. Still great, but it's really, really different. And then now I'm thinking, okay, this is diegetic. They're listening to some rockin' tunes while doing robot surgery on each other, and advancing medical the medical prowess light years, but sure. But as he starts talking, it becomes score. It's so score. It's like it's not
it's
just something
basically
in the
it's like diegetic, and then as soon as he opens the door, the score takes over.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
They start talking, it gets low, and then it pops back up again when he's, and not just like in a volume, like the music and texture itself. So I question whether it was really diegetic or what, just one of these great examples, kind of like the Huts, where it's both.
Right. That's true.
Where the drums are both diegetic and score. We don't hear the fanfare in real life, but
you know what I was thinking about that was Vom Red is what I was thinking of. Sorry. just continuing this joke. It's a bot. Anyway, I hear you, and I should say, like, we should probably talk about this since we're all musicians. Like that. Like, first of all, hey everybody! Like, the guy the modder that's working in the shop is Thundercat.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is literally the first celeb cameo I've noticed in this show, except for Jennifer Beals.
And I was saying that besides Xanthe and we have a text chain, by the way, we're all best friends. And Xanthe let me know in our text chain that
my former roommate is. I'm just kidding.
No, that's
James, I'm just kidding. James
that's not what I'm bringing up. That's not what I'm bringing up.
When I say this.
No, I don't hate it. I thought it was funny. Well, no, I was going to bring up the fact that Thundercat is, to my knowledge, and I would love somebody to dig up somebody else. I can't think of another like prominent musician. I guess besides Xanthe brought up John Williams
and
Michael Giacchino.
Michael Giacchino was a stormtrooper.
In which movie?
Force Awakens. He was a first grader trooper. I mean, how would we have known this?
I guess what I'm thinking more is like less the people that scored the movies and more like celebrity music cameos.
Totally.
Like I can't think of another musician that's like cameoed in Star Wars besides Thundercat. So bravo Thundercat. And everyone like Thundercat. I have always heard about Thundercat, and I have to confess that I wasn't super familiar with his music before this episode, but he's just an incredible like neo jazz, neo
he's
soul
a bassist.
kind of bassist and singer, like a lot of like George Clinton in there, a lot of he's got a lot of D'Angelo in his influences. Really diverse. You can hear so much, but he's also got such a unique sound. So check out Thundercat. There's one song that I felt very similar to that Outside the Club song, and it's Miguel's Happy Dance. I should say that the lyrics are not safe for work. So I just want to make sure.
That feels like
what's
a
really Star Wars theme? The children watch Star Wars.
No. I mean, what's it? Miguel's Happy Dance?
Miguel's Happy Dance is like I thought that the bass line on that track reminded me the most of this particular cue.
What is that? Is that just like a song?
Oh, sorry, that's one of Thundercat's songs. Okay?
Miguel's Happy Dance.
Yeah, Miguel's Happy Dance.
What album was it on?
But it's on, I think, his most recent album.
Oh,
okay. But there's like a lot of. So I guess here's where it brings me to is that like this track sounds like it's Thundercat playing bass. Okay.
Yeah.
But he's not credited in Spotify, so I don't know. I don't know if he is on it or not. Regardless, if he's not on the track, Joseph Shirley. Oh, he did. Okay.
He did.
According to Jonah. Where did he say that, Jonah?
Yeah, we've been wondering this.
Like.
So that makes sense. I really think he should be credited on the Spotify.
Well,
track.
we don't know their terms.
We don't know their terms. We don't know
we don't know what the contract said.
Yeah, just our opinion.
You don't know what the contract said. Regardless, if it is Thundercat, it's like, it sounds really cool. Like very much.
Oh, he said it on Twitter.
Very cool. And okay, awesome. So you can hear his bass work on that. So the mod, for people watching that maybe don't realize, the guy that's got the yellow braided hair inside that's modding Fennec, that saves Fennec, is Thundercat, and Score is the bassist leading
which
up
is
to
pretty
that.
I mean, think about that. Not only do you get to cameo in Star Wars, you get your music in Star Wars, or at least you're playing. Depending on what the situation was, you get playing very reminiscent of your style and your character.
Yeah.
To let's just say that then.
Right.
That's pretty dark. I mean, that's like, I'm trying to think of like just a non-musical celebrity cameo that you would just have, almost like Danny Trejo coming in, if he had come in and actually had like something from one of the other movies he's been in, like the Machete itself.
Yeah.
Kind
Well,
of a
you know
thing.
what I think of is like, you remember like Lin-Manuel Miranda like had a
that's
track
true. In TFA.
in The Force Awakens, but he wasn't in the movie. You know what I mean? It'd be like if Lin-Manuel Miranda was like in that band in Maz's castle, you know? So this is just so cool. I am a huge fan actually of this track on the soundtrack. I thought it was dope. I love that, like, on Tatooine they've got like weird neo soul, like, you know, like crazy like acid jazz going on like outside. Like, I think that's so cool.
This is
Some
the
people
music
might think it's not Star Warsy, but I'm for it, man. Because I have to say, if there's one thing that like would love more fleshing out in terms of all the alien, it's like, let's give us some weird music going on in Star Wars, you know? So yeah.
And we've heard club music in the past, right? There was some in Coruscant in one of the movies, right? And
it was
but
never this cool,
like
though.
I know it's this weird, you know, kind of niche, not niche, but, you know, like very specific, interesting drum and bass jazz.
Yeah, so cool.
That's happening. You know,
we have heard a variety of diegetic music, though.
Totally.
In like the various jukeboxes and mixes and everything.
But not this cool.
No.
I mean, cool is in the eye of the beholder. I mean, I think this was the best, like,
you're right.
type of drum and bass track or whatever in this show, and probably in Star
Wars. Well, I should say that, like, that opening up, like Justin said, that outside the club music. So here's the thing: is we think about canon and sound, like hypothetically, the song that we hear when we're like watch inside the mod parlor is not what they're listening to. It's what they've been listening to is Thundercat. So like,
no. the music leading up is the one that Thundercat is soloing in.
That's what I'm saying. So like, there's no, like, not really any drum and bass going on.
No, it's got a little bit of a thing, but so that's what
I'm saying.
That doesn't mean it's
they're not listening to drum and bass in there. They're listening to Thundercat inside.
And
that
so when we open,
not
that's when they go in, the score begins. Yeah, that's.
I know, but I know it's not actually Thundercat in Star Wars. I'm saying that, like, but basically what they're listening to is like Thundercat's music, right? It's like,
but it's not his music. I don't think it. I don't. Well, we don't know for sure. I think he just played on it.
You don't think he had a writing hand in that? I mean, it's so bass heavy. How can you not say that that was written by Thundercat? He like basically carries the whole thing, you know?
I know, but again, there are many ways that songs come.
I know. I get it. But at the same time,
my former roommate is his pianist and said for the intro, it is his music for the intro as they are walking up to the spot. Don't know about the inside, but outside, I know that's his track. But I don't know what he meant. I didn't like specify. So like, I don't want to take him out of context. You know,
listen, we're
just
not trying to
cover
like
my bases. I just want to cover.
No. I'm not trying to do that either. What I'm trying to say is like, that is his bass playing, and he is like blowing over those changes. Like, he is just like ripping.
Yeah, it's incredible.
And
like,
it's
it would
so
be cool
good.
if it is his track.
And that's what I'm saying is like, they're in there modding on Tatooine. They're like,
in world listening to you know,
it's
that's like, what they're listening to as diegetic music.
That's so cool.
So yeah, the reason I don't want to believe that it's his is because he's not credited as the writer, so I don't want to believe that it is his track.
Yeah,
because if it were literally his track, I think he would have had some credit on the metadata, but I think he was a featured soloist on it, maybe. Like,
maybe a featured
soloist. Like it should say featuring or something. But yeah. So Thundercat, yes.
No, I appreciate it. We don't want you know, whenever we talk about like official stuff on here, we don't want to like just take what we don't know anything. Okay.
Yeah. But it is an interesting argument or a thought in a weird way. Again, not to make outlandish statements or anything, but even if any musician in any context like this was invited to be on this track, played music very much of their style, perhaps that was an improvisation. The composer says, hey, can you do your thing over this, you know, and add your sound, your style to this, you know, it's a collaborative effort at that point. You know,
if the pay's
it's
there. I'm so cynical.
of course, if the pay and the contract and the industry and all those things and all the T's are crossed, but it is a collaborative effort at that point. Theoretically, that addition, not
Thundercat
specifically
helped create
Thundercats, but that
oversight.
addition was not theirs. It was added by somebody else.
Yeah.
Whose name is on it. Yes, that comes down to pay and contract and things like that. But
yeah,
you know,
I think we know. I mean, why did they put that in the credits? Even that it was featuring him. I just.
Yeah.
That's what makes it.
I think viewers would have been like delighted to actually know that. I think that would have been like really cool. Although it may have taken some people out of the story or something. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Maybe they had their reasons, but yeah.
We just like freeze frame and like huge text come up like Thundercat, like when you see his face on screen.
The name pops up.
It was so awesome. So awesome.
No, that was great.
That would be so cool, Chaco, to see him play bass with his B2 battle droid hand.
So here's a hopeful prediction, outlandish prediction. We get to re-meet this modding character, and he's playing with Max Rebo's band in the background as like a guest soloist.
That would be
Max
cool.
Rebo
right?
And,
he's just like
and
he
the
like
mod master.
That's so sick.
I don't know if Garza Flip's Sanctuary could handle that. Or it's not like background music.
Yeah, it's right. It's like
she wants like chill vibes. She wants like, dun, 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 like.
Yeah, exactly. She wants like music. We call that.
Speaking of that, we got more Max Rebo music.
We did.
I think this is my favorite of the Max Rebo so far.
Can I just bring up one more thing with the parlor?
Yes.
Mm-hmm,
okay.
Mm-hmm.
So okay. All right. Is anyone else like a Prodigy fan in the chat or on this stream? Is anyone else like into the Prodigy? You know, the band from like the 90s, like the electronic musicians. Does anyone else think that this mod parlor music sounds like not exactly, but just so influenced by "Smack My You Know What Up" by the Prodigy? Okay, so if you
I know the Prodigy. Hold on, I don't.
You know that song?
I want to.
Oh my god!
I know Prodigy. I need to look this up while we're moving.
Okay, smack my you know what up. Okay, so smack my.
I can't wait to hear James's cover of this.
So, do you know the song, Xanthe?
No.
Okay, so it's with the amen break drum and bass type drums underneath, right? And we've got
that sounds familiar.
Take my picture, smack my up. Okay.
Yes, I'm listening to it right now. Oh my goodness.
It's so much like this song.
It's
Okay, so we got this like bass fuzz synth, and in Smack My You Know What Up, it's this. Okay, boom, boom. This one is in G, okay, and it's this. All right. Something like that, right? Something like okay, right? And it's slightly different intervals, but it's like it's the same rhythm. It's like it's so much the Prodigy. Okay, Cutting Room Floor. So people know this song, okay? Go listen to like starting halfway through to the mod parlor and go listen to that Prodigy song and tell me that you don't hear like it's like they're basically listening to the Prodigy in the mod parlor. It's like
it's
similar.
It's super close. Yeah, that's too funny.
And yeah, the controversial music video. So like listen, I'm not like endorsing that song or whatever, okay?
Yeah, you're drawing a comparison.
I'm drawing a comparison. Yeah.
Your rendition is really entertaining.
So it's so much like that song. I was like, I almost felt myself like singing like "Snap my picture," like smack. I was like,
Oh my
I felt
goodness.
like I felt like I was like back in 1997 or whatever it was. I don't remember what it was. It was so The Prodigy that I was like, whoa. Anyway, I just wanted to make sure that there's one channel on the internet that will draw comparisons to the Mod Parlor and The Prodigy. It's this one. So here you go.
It's great.
Thank you.
That's
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
James
so
has
much.
made this. Very entertaining. Okay,
This is
so
great.
how did we get there? What were we talking about?
We're talking about
So
Mod
you were,
Parlor.
and you were gonna go on to Max Rebo before I made sure that we like mentioned that this song sounds exactly like Smack My Whatever Up. Yeah. Anyway.
That's great. Okay, well, we did get another diegetic Max music. Honestly, this show is giving us a lot of diegetic music, and I do appreciate that. I appreciate that greatly because I love Star Wars diegetic music, and it's the easiest way to make music more palatable to me is just say that it's diegetic, and then I'm like, okay, accepted.
You're like, oh, the people. Oh, people in Star Wars like bad music. Okay,
no,
that's fine.
that's not why. It's because are you joking with me again, and I'm not getting it?
Yes.
Okay. No, really.
Me too.
Honestly, it's a great trick. Just if you don't like part of the score, just ask yourself, would I like this if this were diegetic? If this were coming out of a jukebox, would it go down easier? And suddenly it goes down easier because it's not for you. It's in the world. It's just part of the world. So anyway, I think all of that is like to say, I think all of those things work as diegetic and is probably like the drum and bass in the chase scene less so. But if the drum and bass in the chase scene were also diegetic, I would have thought it was a groove, like
just blasting out of the speed.
Yo, I love it.
Exactly. Exactly. If someone were playing it on their speeder sound system or something, I would have been totally fine.
The citizens of Tatooine are really into drum and bass.
No, apparently drum and bass and Muzak, or at least that little niche of subculture there.
But
also,
no canonical drum and bass yet.
Yeah, speaking about diegetic, just in-world musicians, does the Max Rebo band just practice restarting up a tune after a fight? Because they were on that. Like that's such a like in-movie bar band thing where it's like fight, everything stops, and they're like, okay, dun-dun-dun-dun-dun, and they just launch exactly right where
they're like, all right, this is.
I just love this.
Well, they're in rehearsal. They're like, all right, guys. So if there's any like really disturbing violence, like maybe limbs dropped on the floor, whatever, if things might go completely silent in the bar, we'll take it up at rehearsal letter B. Okay, does everyone agree with that? Okay, cool.
Every tune has that. Yeah, every tune has that.
Yeah, actually, I don't know. I've played a lot of gigs of this type where like you're just breezing through music and you're constantly starting and stopping because maybe it's like a wedding or like an event or like you just have to be ready to loop things and stop things early, and you have to know like when all of the spots, all the possible stopping points in like every song are, and you just get used to it. You just get
it was
really
just
used to it.
Such a great smooth hit it, Max.
Also, like first time we get his name in canon, like spoken.
Yeah, true.
Awesome. Well, okay, maybe not in canon. I'm sure there's comics and books that have said his name. But it's on-screen canon,
So Cutting Room Floor says there was a similar track for the Dark Troopers and the Mandalorian, and yes, agreed. But that it's like the drum and bass. You mean like that was score, not
that
not
felt
source.
More dubstep than drum and bass.
Yeah, that's true. It felt more dubstep. But
dubby.
Still, it was score, so it was non-diegetic.
Oh yeah, there wasn't actual dubstep going on the
right. It's the Dark Troopers.
It's like Moff Gideon is like really into Skrillex.
He has a boombox.
He's like 6 years behind on his electronic music.
I think that's why like electronic music and like sort of popular genres of music in scores are kind of difficult to stomach sometimes, is because trends like come and go so fast, and those trends are always like when it's in the score, it's always a few years old. It's already it's always old.
It's so easy to date electronic music for some reason. You know, it's not very timeless in some ways, and that's such a value. That's such like a subjective thing to say.
Well, yeah, and it's why they replaced
But
Lopty Neck with Jedi Rocks and like certain things
right,
like that.
right, yeah, exactly, right. It's like electronic music is some of the most like of its time in some ways. You know, it's
Oh,
kind of
totally.
interesting in that way. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree with that too. But at Cutting Room Floor, I do hear what you're thinking. I mean, because we're linking it back to kind of more of a dubstep kind of sounding thing with the Dark Troopers, and this Mod Parlor track had some dubstep style synthesizers and things in the
Sure.
bottom
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
with this drum and bass kind of
Yeah.
track slowed a little slower than
Yeah.
drum and bass usually, but
And maybe we'll
kinda
just make
had
the
that
difference real
feel.
quick. Like a
Yeah, I
lot
was
of
gonna say we should
dubstep.
probably let's
So
do a quick over.
I'll do a
Yeah.
I'll do a little drum beatbox demonstration. Okay.
Resident
Yeah.
percussionist.
So drum and bass is usually like it's
160 and
usually like
above.
yeah,
You
it's
have your drums out?
160, 175, okay? And it's like so you hear a 1 1 4 1 2 3 4 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 boom right? A lot of dubstep, or at least like late stage dubstep, I should say that like dubstep a lot of times felt almost in like a half feel, like you think of like the classic dubstep
Like
track that
breakdowns.
most people know is that what is that, like what is it, Godzilla and Large Sprites or whatever. What is that Skrillex tune that was like the big hit?
Land or whatever.
What is it called? Dinosaurs and Large Sprites. Somebody in the tell me. But or Centipede. You think about Centipede, okay? That's another one by Knife Party. And you think of like and you hear this like halftime. 1 2 3 4
Yep.
Now you have forever on the internet video footage of me beatboxing dubstep. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
So yeah, but you think of the different feels, like drum and bass is more like one ga ga do ga do ga. Dubstep typically is that more like boom da da dun da da dun da da boom.
So the
tempo,
kick drums
right?
are more spaced out.
Yeah, well, specifically the snare drum that really sets it apart, because the kick drum are all over the place. It's really the snare drum. With drum and bass, it's always it's on 2 and 4 regardless. 1 2 3 4 1.
Oh.
So drum and bass, it's still there. 1. Dubstep, it's slower, so it's boom 3 4. So slower tempo, slower kick drum, right?
Yeah. And drum and bass drumming, that's the snare goes all over the place too. We want that 2 and 4 to make it feel familiar, but what's so fun about drum and bass is that once you have one locked in, you can kind of do whatever the heck you want. Kind of do whatever you want.
Break does
but it's not just
the end of the second bar. Yeah.
Wait,
but that's the classic beat where they got 1 2 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and a 1 and 2 and a 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and a 3 and a tick right?
Wait, why is it called Amen?
So it's from Amen Brother, which was a television show, and that is actually from the theme song to Amen Brother. And they call it the Amen break because it's actually it's called the break. They actually took a drum break. The drummer takes a break and plays that groove. It's from that actual television.
Whenever
it's
you refer to that,
it's a track by the Winstons.
It's a church.
It's a track by the Winstons.
The Winstons, exactly.
Yeah, the Winstons.
Amen Brother. Yeah, check it out.
Yeah, Amen Brother. And it's not just the drums that kind of define these electronic styles. That's why we're kind of picking up on some of this. It's the bass and the synthesizers underneath that happens with a lot of drum and bass. It's very, at least old school drum and bass is very reggae based still. And the bass lines are a little bit more active and fun. Whereas in dubstep, it's more focused on this kind of raw sound design, where in drum and bass you're getting boom 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 boom, you know, these kind of like sparse little bass thing melodies almost. Where in dubstep, with this kind of doom, you're getting a lot of
like
wow
whistles and filters and
you know, this very mechanical sounding stuff, which going back to this mod parlor, all that music kind of represented this mod not mod music, but modding thing
very
happening.
cyberpunk, you know, which is like, that's a thing that was like late 90s idea. The cyberpunk, like Matrix is like the classic cyberpunk movie, right?
Yeah, it sounds like drills almost.
So Cuttering the Floor
like
says
power
Evangelist
tools.
Blade Runner soundtrack is
Yeah,
still
and I
timeless,
should
but
just
know what you
make
mean.
sure I clarify what I said. Like, I'm not saying like all electronic music ever made
It's
is like
dated
not
after a few years.
is dated, but I'm saying it's very, when you have very specific genre based electronic music, you can like really place it when it's from, you know.
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
be it by sheer notion of the genre. Like nobody really like the top classics are not like drum and bass and house electronic songs these days, you know. That's very of its time, you know. You're not hearing anything that sounds like Darude Sandstorm on the radio these days, you know.
Yeah, and music helps shape like what the audience feels about a scene, or like how to regard it, like as an emotional cue. So when like maybe dubstep or like electronic music, any kind of electronic music is part of the score, if because of trends and because every audience person will have like a slightly different relationship to that kind of music, which the same goes for the record, the same goes for orchestral score, but it's just that since that's a more common language of like most films that we like grew up with, it's not as it's not jarring to hear like a violin come in. But if you already, and this is the danger with using tropes in general, which is that tropes are not necessarily bad. Like there are thematic things that like can be very intentional, but because tropes conjure already so many preconceived notions for the viewer, it is kind of a fast track to a whole packet of associations that are not necessarily what the director wanted to be splashing out onto their new piece of work. So like when you use a trope, it's going, whether you want it to or not, it's going to come with everyone's associations with that. So if you are really on top of, like, I have a friend who's like super on top of EDM, and like she's so picky about like who she lets, like, so if she were to hear something like this, it would really turn her off, because it would be like it would be like old and like stale. Like the Dark Troopers would not come off as like cool or like menacing at all. It would probably make her feel like it's silly.
Right. I totally hear that. And I think that's probably people's like, just to bring it all the way back to probably Cutting Room Floor was the person in the chat that said that this was controversial music, right? Or that's probably why people found it controversial, because it reminded them of like the Matrix in the 90s, you know,
in world stuff. Yeah.
And it felt not quote unquote Star Wars in some ways, but I also wonder how many people. Okay, maybe this is like a big statement that's coming out of nowhere, but I'm also wondering, when people say that, how many of these people have like watched the Clone Wars, like the Clone Wars has so much.
It doesn't matter though. Does it matter?
I mean, it matters to me in the way that, like, if you think this doesn't sound Star Wars, in that there's no precedent for this type of sound and soundtrack to a Star Wars piece of media. But
that's not what people are saying. They're not saying there's no precedent for it. They're saying, to me, this doesn't feel like Star Wars to me.
Yeah, I know that there's like a nebulous thing, but I also like, you know, we get this whole thing back where it's like, you know, it's all about feelings, it's all about all this stuff, right? But it's just, I just wanted to make the point that like Clone Wars does a lot of really out there things with its score. It has a lot of EDM in it. It has a lot of, we've talked about, it's got like source music from Bollywood in it. You know, there's a lot of stuff that you wouldn't expect, that I'm in some ways now, like, when, you know, Book of Boba Fett and Mandalorian are a little bit more mainstream for audiences. Like, I feel like this is a blanket statement. I feel like sometimes that when I'm reading reviews of people of the Book of Boba Fett on some of these live action shows, it's like some of the criticisms, it almost feels like these people haven't seen the Clone Wars,
which is fine. Yeah.
Which is fine. I guess the point is like, all of us nerds are like well accustomed with all this weird stuff in Star Wars, because we've been watching like Bad Batch and Clone Wars and Rebels and all these weird things that don't really have some of these weirdo things that have made the main screen. And now that these weirdo things are making the main screen, to me, like it's some people are reacting to it, being like, whoa, that doesn't feel like the original trilogy to me. And it's like, well, there's been a lot of things that have happened on screen that don't feel like the original trilogy. You just haven't been watching Clone Wars or Rebels or whatever.
Right.
And that's a blanket statement. It doesn't apply to everything. I'm just saying that there's definitely things that are like weird that are now showing up in like Book of Boba Fett. I imagine they're going to continue to show up in like Andor and Kenobi, Ahsoka, all these other shows. And I think that, you know, we're kind of used to it in some ways because we've been watching all these cartoons, you know? So
I
I don't know.
I understand what you're saying. I still fundamentally disagree with it, but I do like. Sorry.
No, but I mean,
I learn how to word stuff differently, but
what do you disagree with? I guess is the question.
Well, it seems maybe disagree is the wrong word because I'm assuming that you think that those opinions or that those thoughts are maybe like kind of less informed. Also, I'm not sure I completely know what the definition of like weirder things is, because I think there's like a different threshold for weirder things that different people are coming up against. And I think when it comes to like, we've already, seen the cartoons and like heard music kind of like this in other places. I would say that even people who have heard that, to them, that doesn't, I wouldn't be so sure that it wouldn't sound weird to them still every time, or even that there are certain kinds of weird that feel more acceptable to some people and other kinds that feel less acceptable.
But don't you think like being exposed to the juxtaposition of like what they expect from their franchise and then seeing it happen in their franchise makes it feel less jarring the next time it comes around? I guess is the question. I feel like some of these little genre mixing that happens sometimes feels jarring because they've never experienced that within their own genre. Like they're saying that feels like the Matrix to me, but it's like you hear some of the comments, which it's like, like
to me is the main part that is so important.
I mean, this is all just off of feeling, right? It's kind of like when I watch Star Wars, I don't expect the Matrix. When I watch Star Wars, I don't expect the Marvel, the humor. Some of these criticisms you see when people make, they're like, oh, that felt too much like Marvel to me. Oh, that felt too much like the Matrix to me. Oh, that felt too much like whatever to me, right?
Fine and accurate to them.
Yeah, I know, but I guess once you start to see it in Star Wars, it feels less not like Star Wars, I guess is my point.
To you, but not necessarily to that same person.
Maybe not, but you'll see. I guess but I also think that when I watched the Clone Wars the first time, I was like, some of this music does not feel like Star Wars to me. And I guess maybe I'm going off, I had a very similar reaction but now it doesn't feel that way because now I've seen
you went on a journey, James.
This is the point I'm making.
Not everyone will.
And these journeys, not everyone has
what I'm trying to say is that like now they're putting it in the live action stuff and more people are seeing it, and I'm curious to see these people's reactions in a couple years when they've seen it already, when they've heard drum and bass in the mod parlor scene, and that now and it happens in some other show later on or some other weird thing, how they're going to react to it, because there's already precedent for them in Star Wars for them. In some ways, because I've watched Clone Wars, I've seen Rebels, I've seen all these weird things. It doesn't seem so weird to me to see some of these things happen in the live action stuff because I've seen it,
And to me, in Clone Wars, it was often I didn't like it, and sometimes I did. Like I we've talked about Clone Wars like a little bit. Actually, we haven't talked about it that much, like not on the show, but a lot of Clone Wars things I was not a fan of score wise. And so I guess I'm still like, I don't love every time like, I didn't like the music in the chase scene. Like I didn't.
Yeah.
But sometimes but that doesn't mean I don't like any electronic music in Star Wars. Like for me, there's still like so many, it's not like a trajectory of like becoming more accepting of all of the music. Like I still feel like it's a very discerning like situation every time I hear a new score, no matter what like if other genres are being brought in or not. So, but that's also kind of how I am in general. Brick something says, in fairness, if someone who didn't see those things then watch Clone Wars and Rebels, it's still possible that they'd say, yeah, this stuff also doesn't sound very Star Warsy to me.
Yeah, I know. And that was my reaction when I watched Star Wars or Clone Wars, but I don't know what happened. But maybe watching enough Clone Wars, I was like, it's fine. Let's put this
Yeah,
weird stuff in Star Wars from now on, you know?
I think eventually, I think more people will be in your situation, and yeah, I am
It's not
too
just
in
about music, by
general.
the way. I'm not always as bothered by the music as some other people, actually.
Yeah.
It's also just like, it's kind of like, remember that Disney cue from Bad Batch? Remember that? Like, that's always in the back of my brain, you know?
In the little cart. The little...
Right. Right?
Yeah.
Can you imagine that music ever like happening in one of the films and how people would feel about that moment? People would be like, "What was that?"
Yeah.
We'd have
Everyone,
something to
do you
talk
remember that? Does that
Was
melody
that
is
Bad
living
Batch
rent
episode
free in
2?
my head, and I cannot. I like think about it like.
I love that
Oh.
you're just prepared to play that at any moment.
Because it's there always.
Because it goes like this.
Every day. Pinocchio.
Literally. Okay.
Right.
So
But
anyway,
that's a Star Wars music cue now, you know?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. But like we can take them in stride too. Plus, I can take shows and animated shows much more in stride. Like there's certain media that it's
Right.
less important to me. Like if that were like if that's how like episode 9 were scored, that's we're talking about a different thing.
Right.
I think shows are I always think TV as a format in general is like the place to do the experiments.
But some ways these live action shows are like that where it meets, right? That's what I guess is where I'm saying.
But Book of Boba has like tipped that.
It's like where the movie, and that's what I'm saying. Book of Boba has gone into that weird old Clone Wars
which makes me feel like it's for a really young audience. Like which makes me feel like Book of Boba is for a younger audience than Mandalorian because the music is so like silly sometimes.
Right. Yeah.
So
anyway, I didn't mean to derail the stream. I just meant trying to make a point that like sometimes when you've inserted enough like little things into a franchise, you'll find, you know, years down the line that people have accepted it more. And I feel like the prequels are kind of like that. Like people didn't really like those prequels when they came out because they felt not Star Warsy. That was honestly, a lot of people were like, what is Jar Jar Binks? What is all this weird, silly crap in this prequels? Now people love them, you know? And now there's like, let's see more of those weird like pit droids and stuff in our Star Wars.
Although we don't have like a survey out, so we don't know if it's the same people that came around or just the people who already loved it are now grown-ups like us and
we can only guess.
Have our voices heard of how much we love it. So Brick Something says, that said, we have to admit Star Wars has the challenge of having 9 huge films that were scored by one person. So anything is different. And
it's all like epic orchestral score for all 9 films, you know? It's like very John Williams wasn't like mixing from a lot of different instrumental differences. It's mostly orchestral score, and when it's diegetic, it's like, you know, it's what it is. But
so Brick Something says, by the way, I loved the music in the mod parlor, and which I did too. And I was thinking like, oh, okay, Brick. Okay. One thing I wrote in my notes, like while the mod parlor scene was happening, which I think it was funny because that was at the beginning of this episode when the speeder chase was at the end of the last episode, and I did not like that. But as the mod parlor was happening, I was checking in with myself, like, why do I like this? Why do I like this? And the answer is never it wasn't fundamentally, the music is fundamentally better. Although like arguably I would like this track better than that track, but that's not what it was. It was the fact that not only like the setting of it, like it was a very specific setting, not just like the generic score for a speeder chase that happens to have mod kids in it. It was also the fact, I think, that it was a montage. Like that for some reason did something for me. Like the beat, like the way that the rhythm and, or not the rhythm, but the like the meter, the metrical like monotony worked much better because it was a montage, and music like that. And the speeder chase, I feel like that same type of music didn't work because that music kind of makes the time, it kind of makes you lose track of time. Like we were talking about how it felt like you just put on a track and walked away and then waited for the thing to finish cooking or something. And it's not a very like real-time experience when you have music on that's so repetitive. It's a more like sweeping, you kind of step out and think about the bigger picture for a second. So I think it works better when it's not supposed to be like a real-time, high-stakes, real-time thing. I think it works better when you're like clearly the surgery didn't take place over 2 minutes. It was probably, 12 hours or 3 hours at least. It was hours
Right.
basically. And so that music sped it up and made it, it worked so much better. Like it was the opposite. It wasn't trying to score something fast. It was actually trying to speed up something slow.
Yeah, and I have to say, everything we've said positively about the scene, I did actually feel like the scene was too long.
Yeah.
I kind of think so too.
We've said a lot of positive things about this music and actually really enjoyed the music, but at the same time, I was like, all right, I think we got it. He fixed her. But they had to make it like they were in a rock and a hard place. They actually had to make it look like it was like an ordeal. But it's like nobody really actually wants to see it, But or I mean, some people probably do. I bet like surgeons were really into that scene.
Or just like how do they think there's like so little blood in this scene? It's not realistic.
Fluids, and we just cut out someone's stomach and replaced it, and hey, it's all good.
We have a bassist, so the bassist, I'm sure, recognized Thundercat.
Nice.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Sweet.
With regard to the surgery thing, I could one sort of thing in this episode and in the show, which I know we kind of just let medical stuff happen in Star Wars without thinking too hard about it, and I understand that. That's fine. But like Fennec's injury was it was grave. It was like a grave injury. And first of all, the fact that like a mod parlor could fix it is sort of one thing. And I couldn't help but notice that like the focus was always on Boba needing to go in the back to tank to heal. Like, Boba, you need to heal. I'm like, is Fennec, she's totally fine now that she's...
because Thundercat's her surgeon. Like, Thundercat knows what he's doing.
That's,
Like,
Boba never had Thundercat
I want to know the timeline on that too. So
like, how come she's not going into the back to tank too? Like, she's recovering
Xanthe,
from
are you
something
questioning
big too.
Thundercat's surgery skills? Like, is that what you're doing right now?
So what about that character though? It's like, kid, you got a lot of great skills. You should become a doctor. No, I'm going to become a modder. Use that same.
I know what you're saying though, Xanthe. Is she's that like a medical emergency was like very much like, let's just get through this, and she's fine now.
Well, yeah. Whereas Boba exited the Sarlacc, has been like, okay, maybe not like top Boba form compared to what people expect, but like to the average person, like Boba seems
pretty
okay, which we don't want to assume, but like also we're just assuming that Fennec, I don't know, Fennec's like, you have to recover, like you have to, I don't know. It's funny.
You need to
funny.
Well, to be fair, we did find out that he decided to like willingly reintroduce himself to the Sarlacc pit again. Like, because he like apparently didn't remember having his armor ripped off of him by those Jawas.
I was very. Here's where one of my confusions were that I mentioned from the beginning of this stream. He got out of the Sarlacc pit with the armor. He used his armor to get out of the Sarlacc pit. Why would it be there? All those years, that was two confusions for me. How long was he with the Tuskens?
The only thing I can think of is that he like maybe thinks that the Sarlacc like ate his armor, like the Tuskens took his armor off him and threw it back in the Sarlacc. Maybe he doesn't remember any. Maybe it was like all a blur.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it must be like such a hardcore amnesia thing or a blur because he used his that's how he got out. And then he crawled out, and then eventually everything was stolen. So I was a little confused.
But what's the timeline? The timeline.
Because he mentioned he's sitting there over the ship. He's like, all those years ago, this is where I lost it, or things like that. So how long was he with? Do we have any indication on how long he was with the Tusken tribe versus post Tusken tribe?
Yeah,
wandering the deserts, wandering where the heck, plotting his revenge against Bib Fortune and the bikers. Like, was he
Star Wars Explained did like a pretty good breakdown of this recently.
4 years?
Oh, okay.
So if you check out Star Wars Explained, there is a video on this, and I have to say that I don't remember what the answer was, but my understanding is like most of the time.
On the video.
I did click on that video, but I remember being like, oh, okay, and then I forgot it. But I believe it's like the most of his time was spent with the Tuskens. Like if you like visualize that 5 years, you could either think like, oh, he spent a lot of time in the pit of the Sarlacc,
which is what I think.
But I think I think Alex thinks that that it's most of his time was spent with the Tuskens.
Yeah.
So
Cutting Room Floor, thanks for that insight. Now your name makes a lot of sense. As an editor, I can tell you that it's much easier to put a montage to a drum and bass track.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So we have Jonah.
As a composer, it'd be very easy to write a drum and bass track to a montage.
Exactly. Easy all around. Let's do montages. Those are the best. And Jonah says, I just imagine the Kiners making that Disney music, probably thinking nothing of it, but now it's traumatized us.
Yep.
I think it's hilarious. At this point, it's hilarious.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah.
And that's where this stuff ends up sometimes when you have these mega fans of a franchise, is they end up being like some of the cheesy, terrible decisions that they make ends up campy, whatever, however you want to describe it, to make us sleep better at night. They become part of what we enjoy about the it's like the stormtrooper like smacking his head in A New Hope, on the door. It's like that is a clear mistake that they should have not, like, they should have just redid that take over. That, like, it kind of undercuts what's happening. But now we all love that moment of like the stormtrooper that's walking in on the Death Star and smacks his head on it. Like we ultimately all conform as crazy psychos that love this franchise.
Agreed.
Many of us do, at least, around the camp. So now all of us on the stream love that terrible Disney music in a weird way. We all have this weird love for that crazy scoring decision that happened out of the blue. At least I do.
I'm not sure if
I kind of love it now.
Yet.
I kind of love it.
But I love the joke. It's like, it's like meme worthy to me.
Yeah,
and
that's what I'm saying. It's like the prequels
are
memes now in some ways, and some of this stuff is now turning into memes too. So,
Book of Boba Fett seems like it seems meme worthy. I don't know. It like Wilbur Hood.
Yes, right.
Yeah. Okay, so now
how about Boba Fett holding that droid up against by his neck and be like, "Don't you know who I am?" to this like droid, "I'm Boba Fett," to like this this defenseless droid.
Too many moments like that really wear on me.
Shut himself
off.
Yeah, I didn't understand that
especially
scene.
when the music is like underscoring that in a funny way. Where I think wasn't it going like, what's Boba's theme? It was like, it probably was doing this. Let's be honest.
Yeah, it was. There was a lot of that.
I think it went. It went.
Yep.
And cut out there, I think, like probably some funny, there, like comedic beats is they get a little bit.
Yeah.
If that feels like more like Marvel.
Sure.
But
that whole scene was interesting, kind of a thing. I was also half expecting the chef droid to be like, "General Kenobi," and Boba Fett would come and be like, "Hello there," kind of a thing, spinning all the knives around. And then the little EV droid cameo. Why is that the only droid that has a moving mouth?
The Lep droid?
No, the EV series droid. The one that kind of looks like the alien from Alien. The torture droid from Return of the Jedi.
So interesting.
Maybe because he did a torture face.
It's just
that's so funny. Wait, I literally can't think of another droid that
I've been wondering for a while. I mean, it hasn't been confirmed that it's the, like, in canon exact same EV-99.
No chat.
Kind of a thing, but that's the only droid. Please, somebody find this for me, Jonah. Do this.
EV-99.
Yeah, I don't think it's confirmed that is EV-99, but because she wasn't. Although they sounded the same. But are there any other droids that move their mouths? Like that distinctly is like moving a mouth, and I can't think of any other ones that. No, okay, I lied. I just remembered one. It's Attack of the Clones, the bar, no, the diner.
Oh, the waiter.
The wait, yeah, she moves her mouth.
She definitely moves around. Are you sure?
I feel like because she's like, someone's in the back to see ya, and then what's his name comes
In the
out,
back to.
kind of.
Back to
I
see you. Yeah.
Dex, right? Is Dex's diner?
Yes.
Whatever.
FLO. Her name is literally
Flo.
Flo, y'all.
Flo.
Yeah.
Does she move her mouth?
I'll watch.
Dex's diner. I'm gonna go.
Yeah, she's moving her mouth. Wow. Good
Okay,
memory.
so but really, not many other ones like move their mouth.
Yeah, you think that's like a completely unnecessary design?
Unnecessary design because everyone's just speaking out of these little vocoder voices.
Well, unless they're meant to be like a front-facing, like front of house staff.
It must be.
Why is the torture droid like made to like?
Well, similar reasons, but just like opposite.
Let's make this torture
spectrum.
droid more human-like, so we can see how brutal he is. You know?
Well, yeah.
And that's right, Jonah. And EV9D9 was in Mandalorian Chapter 5 as well. So that's why I was curious if this was the same one.
Another
Yeah,
chapter.
it could be.
Maybe
right?
that's where the theme. Maybe.
Well, okay.
That belongs
in
to
terms
EV9D9.
That's EV9.
So first of all,
I'm just kidding.
Xanthe, maybe like to my ears in this episode, let's talk about the Xanthe theme, right?
Yeah.
Like to my ears, like I didn't hear that Xanthe theme in its full entirety, like in its full like we're doing the theme for real this time.
I did.
No, wait. This is the first part of the sentence. Until. Okay.
Sorry.
I didn't hear that theme in its full entirety until we see his ship. Like until they come out into the hangar and they show his ship.
I wrote that down as theme moments. The ship.
Yeah, it was like here it is. Here's the Boba Fett theme, everybody. And I'm sure that we heard little hints of it before that, but we didn't little times when we were hearing the dun 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 dun. But it's so like bam bam, like we hear it big when we see the fire spray shit, right?
And we hear it again as he's raining fire upon the poor biker.
Yes, we do definitely hear it.
Great scene.
And this is that's like Boba Fett, right?
That's a Boba Fett scene.
Yeah, for sure.
Theoretically, of what we have assumed him to be.
So I guess my point is like let's just like remember what we said in episode 1, which rang true up until this episode, is that we never heard that theme in any of the flashbacks. Until this episode. And now it's here. It's right there in the flashback timeline. And I think it's finally because he's back. He's got his ship. He's done with his journey of self-discovery. And now he's like, I'm here to, create a crime family, I mean, that's one interpretation.
Yeah, that's Boba's got his mojo theme. It's
not
it's become Xanthe Boba to Mojo Boba.
Got his groove back.
Doing his thing.
Yeah.
It
didn't.
And they mixed it in a little with the all these themes kind of like linked together. And that was
I thought
Mojo
it was still, it came off as cheesy to me sometimes, but I think overall it was incorporated better.
Yeah.
And like I thought the score in general was like much smoother. This episode like significantly smoother than a few episodes.
What would you do if they on the Spotify playlist like they had that theme and it was Boba's got his mojo.
This is Boba's back.
Boba's back.
Boba's back. But yeah, I mean that's how I read it. That was the first time they decided to introduce that theme in the flashbacks. And then they started using it like a lot. Yeah. And I think it's because this is the meeting. I do not think we're gonna get more time flashbacks from the rest of the season. I think him coming out of the back of the tank and being like it's just like they might as well have turned. They might as well have turned to the freaking camera at that moment and been like, he's all done with the flashbacks from now on. He's like,
the droid, you are completely healed. It's like,
you are completely healed.
Like, I need a droid to tell me when I'm
I know,
healed.
Right? Today? No, not today. Okay.
So like all the flashback scenes in this episode didn't feel like flashback to me, because flashback to me, yeah, it's Boba. Yeah, it's Boba's getting back, and it feels more in the current time. It's definitely more in the current timeline than before. It felt, and maybe it's because it felt like this is kind of what I have always wanted to know. Like maybe it would have been, maybe I would have enjoyed it as an episode 1. I don't know, but oh man.
Sister 19, lol.
Okay, so I do want to talk about the seismic charge, because seismic charge is the new Willem scream.
Yeah. Well, thank goodness the seismic charge went this way and not that way.
Yeah,
or that
right?
way. Or that
Right?
way.
Right.
Just specifically that way.
Oh, I love it.
Thank
Justin
goodness.
always has these like technological, like real, like remember you talk about the speeder bikes and Bad Batch? It's like, wait, how come you can kind of just fly with them now?
Fly them all over the place. No.
That's such a good point.
Thank goodness.
Make sure it goes horizontally.
And so funny enough,
why did they blow up this?
and I kind of.
Oh yeah, I mean that was kind of.
I wasn't a big fan of the Sarlacc scene, because I was sitting there thinking, like, why are we getting his armor if the armor we knew? Well, you know, we got.
I didn't want to see another creature get killed.
I know.
That was my thought too. There was like mixed. Yeah, sorry, Justin. Go.
No, it's. That's what I thought it was gonna be. Where as like kind of like we just kind of played light with the idea that we just blasted all these speeder bike things. It's like his next score to settle was to just drop one, like fly by, drop it in, and just fly off. Kind of.
Well, they had to make it a hostile force before he just bombs it.
Yeah, no.
I mean, I agree with you, Xanthe, that I didn't feel great about it either. I was like, and this is there's two problems. There's two problems that are highlighted with this show in some ways that are highlighted in this scene. Okay, and that's like. One of them is we already know what happens to you, Boba. So there's no what's the word? Suspense in what's going to happen. Like we already know he makes it through and that his armor's not in there. So like we're just watching him discover that himself. So none of us are like, oh, I wonder if his armor is actually in. Like we know his armor's not in there. So we're like, there's nothing for the viewer to be like suspenseful about. All we can be suspenseful about is like, is he going to get roughed up by the Sarlacc? And for sure he did. And then there's the other problem with the series is like, it's like this like weird thing where it's like they're trying to make Boba like a sympathetic character, but he's like bombing an innocent. I mean, the Sarlacc is ultimately innocent. It's just sitting out there
completely
in the desert.
Completely innocent.
So innocent.
Completely innocent.
It can't even move. It can't. It literally just has its mouth is like just someone.
This is the problem I have with nice Boba, because people are picking on the wrong things about him.
Right.
Like, they're still doing
it's like,
nice
no,
Boba,
dude, he just like
except
bombs
for animal
the
cruelty.
Sarlacc. Yeah.
And,
There's the Sarlacc did nothing wrong. Okay.
That's been my tweet. Yes.
I'll start that subreddit today.
But yeah, James, it's also the suspense is gone. It's like this was my thing with and not to again like not to derail into Solo, but like when first seeing the trailers for Solo, there's a moment where Chewbacca's looking out on the train and there's a cliff coming at him, and you're like, oh no, will Chewie survive?
Right.
That's
always the tricky thing with like prequels and stuff. You have to like really sell the viewer on the journey and what you're watching, and if you can't do that, then there's no suspense because you don't care what, or what already ultimately happens to the viewer. And that's the thing is some of this show comes off as like
trying to cover their bases too much.
It's just like, let me just show you what happened, what Boba did after
just for
after
clarity,
the thing.
just to make sure. Yeah.
And I have to say, like, sometimes it's totally fine for me. Like that scene in some ways, even though it was slightly disturbing in some ways, did fill some of mine. Is like, isn't this so cool to see Boba flying his ship above the Sarlacc and he's blowing it up with his famous bomb from Attack of the Clones, and he's then having a barbecue outside the Sarlacc? Isn't that so just like, can you believe that we're actually
special?
Yeah, put it in the holiday special, right? Yeah, it's like, can you believe that we're even watching this on TV?
I think it would have been really much funnier in like a Lego special or something.
Right. Anyway. It's like, watch Boba do this, So,
well, the action music was fine there.
I liked the action music of the like the heist, almost like getting the ship. I thought that whole I thought that
It was interesting. It was in 7. That was really cool.
You know, that whole thing. I
Yeah,
thought
there
that
was
was
some
really
nice
good music.
juxtaposition of the like meter in the in like the high strings, and
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, it started out in 7 and then they moved it into 12. It was started out with duck, do, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and then they just moved it to straight 12. Bang, gang, 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 gang. Yeah, which is really cool.
yeah, that was cool. Cutting the floor. Oh my goodness, that is violent. So the thing, Chris Anton's voice or sound design, I felt we haven't really talked about sound design that much, but I feel like the sound design, sound mixing, sound editing, I don't know, the sound was so much better this episode than last episode. And it like in a major way, like I don't know why. Last episode's sound, like not even talking about music specifically, but the sound last episode just felt something felt off to me. And the Black Chrysanthemum scene in chapter 3 was one of the big parts that stuck out to me as being like not great. And and it was because, you know, but here when we had Chrysanthemum again, I thought it was so much better. Like,
well, you know why? Because the guy actually had his arm ripped off ultimately, right? It's like what your whole thing was like. Boba is not hurt. Why isn't he hurt with how intense that music is
in the growls and everything? Like, chapter 3, I felt like they just put like Chrysanthemum growls onto like 11, and it was just really, really scary and then silly because nothing happened. And then here, I felt like a lot more. It felt, I don't know, Justin. What do you think?
I didn't like this scene, but for me personally, I actually didn't like it at all. But
I loved Garza's little speech.
Yeah, no, him as a character, we kind of get to see. I don't want to say a softer side, but a softer side to him in a sense. It's not as like crazy ferocious, and we actually get like. I mean, for Foley work, holy crap, that arm being ripped off, let's just say, that made you go, at least I did. I was like, oof, okay, I felt that. So goodness on that. Was he just annoyed at these poor Trandoshans? Was he just sitting there like, they're having too much fun, I'm going to go rip his
Wookiees
arm
and Trandoshans have beef with each other.
Yeah, okay. So he's just sitting there and...
Well, there's definitely like canon background that wasn't like fully...
like explained. That's probably why. And then
Trandoshans enslave Wookiees.
And then we get this kind of exposition heavy
speech, right?
You know.
Well, they showed that. They showed the Transocean in episode 1 with a Wookiee pelt. Like, but they didn't say this is a Wookiee pelt.
Yeah.
So we know it is because we're nerds.
Okay. Yeah. So
but like,
and they didn't say I killed
makes sense.
like I personally, but yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I just felt that
I have to say, Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just gonna say I just felt that the speech, while it was kind of interesting, was just kind of this like exposition excuse for all those who do not know this character, who have not read the things. Here's this. Oh, by the way, Gladiator, all these things, throw this, which I get, but like the only part that I enjoyed about that scene, besides seeing DJ and seeing the card droid
DJ?
and who's the original droid from Star Tours, Rex. Getting to see Rex, Max Rebo, was the fact that after all of that effort, he's just like, nah, I got enough money here, kind of a thing.
Mean,
I enjoyed that aspect of the scene personally.
Why did you like it, James?
I liked it because, I mean, for me, it was not that I'm one of these people that like desperately needs my Star Wars to be dark and violent and whatever, but I like, I don't know, I felt like in some ways I've wanted Boba to be a little bit more consistent with that image in some ways, and I've been waiting for, and in some ways I think it's refreshing that they've kind of humanized him in some ways, but I've been, I just wanted to, I know. So my point is like, I've been wanting to see it's kind of like my point last week, which is like, what crime are they all doing, right? It's like, I want to see. You keep telling me that all these people are like the biggest scum and villainy in the galaxy, but I haven't seen enough of them being like terrible.
Yeah.
And it's like, I want to see them be terrible. Just let me show them that they're terrible, right? And good. Sure enough, he rips a dude's arm off, and that's like completely on like that's. There's nothing that justifies that. He does that completely like brutally, you know. And I was happy to see that characterization of this. It's like, he is not a good person, okay? And that's the point. He's like, you know, it's like, we don't need to justify this. He's just not good. And we get to see him be actively brutal. And if Boba is going to be involved with the crime families, he needs to have people that are actively working with him that are not honorable and doing terrible things. Like, for me to like,
about that though. But
what do you mean it's not about that?
I don't think
what do you mean by about?
I don't think Boba needs people who are honorable and who will do terrible things. I think what you're speaking to is something I agree with in terms.
I'm saying to make it realistic as that this is a crime syndicate and that he's involved with criminals.
We don't know exactly what he wants to do with the crime aspect of. Like, he wants a family, right? He wants kind of a bounty hunter union or something, like.
But like, bounty hunters are like not good people. They go out and they take money to go kill people.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, so
I wouldn't say that they're not good people. I would say that they are like, you know, I would like, I think it really, like, I don't think this shows that Black Chrysanthemum is a bad guy. I think it shows that like he is someone who would do this. And so
that's the point. I'm not like, I think we're missing the bigger picture here, which is like, we need people that are that are actively showing displays of like lack of restraint when it comes to things that are like violent. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
So yeah, I think we just need these types of characters that are scary and do scary things, that make people that you know, that are hanging out with the rebellion or with the public or the Jedi would make them feel uncomfortable. Like, you know,
yeah,
can't
I totally agree.
Yeah. So that's the point. It's watching him just rip a dude's arm off in a bar just because he's basically racist. That's basically like what this character is. He's basically looking at a group of Trandoshans and being like, I know Trandoshans that do terrible things. You are Trandoshans. It's actually like completely indefensible, like his behavior in this scene. It's like, it's awful actually. And it's only reason why it flies is because it's Star Wars like aliens, you know? Like, he's basically just eyeing them and being like, I don't like you because of your species. Like
going back to A New Hope.
Yeah. Right. So it's actively awful, actually. It's like, let me just be violent to you because of who you are as a species, you know? So
yeah, but it was important for us to see, like you said, because
yes.
I mean, we have to get a sense of like, and I agree, I want to see Boba like do something that feels like a continuation of like, there has to be something. We have to be able to, like, I want to be able to predict what he's going to do to an extent, at least in the extent to the extent of like knowing his character enough to know like, oh, Boba would like this, or like whatever, Fennec would like this, Chrysanthemum would like this. Chrysanthemum would definitely rip that Trandoshan's arm off. So it helps to know stuff like that. I think I liked this scene also because it's probably my favorite Garsa Fwip scene so far, because I feel like I also didn't really know what her deal was, and here like. Her speech was it was very exposition-y, I agree.
Yeah.
But it was so over the top that like I almost thought for a second, like, is she force sensitive? Like, is she kind of trying to like, is she, and also maybe it's because of the shots of Boba like looking at the scene without interfering, Boba kind of like watching her do her magic, like before we know that it's not going to work anyway. But like I was sort of like drawn in, like, what if this actually what if her sweet talking actually is like a specific, if not force sensitivity, like a specific skill that she has. It didn't work, but still, it was very, the fact that the music stopped and like everyone looked at her when she just kind of waved a hand and she like really commanded that room, and I think that was important for me at least to see, rather she's not just the owner of this sanctuary, but she like, if need be, can really command a presence immediately.
Yeah, she's like, what was the character from Bad Batch? Sid.
Sid.
Yeah, in some ways, like Sid has a lot of power in her domicile.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A sweeter version.
Yeah, sweeter
Like,
version of Sid.
Ostensibly.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah, well, you were right on, Justin, with Chrysanthemum's percussive. Like that shell shaker sound is so
yeah, I was
him.
happy it
It's him.
came back.
And then there's some wood blocks in there. There's some nice percussive scoring right when he's exiting the bar. Really nice percussive sounds, like the shell shakers, wood blocks. Really nice.
Yeah, I'm happy that came back. I was a little worried the last episode. I was like, damn it. I made a prediction it was going to come back and it wasn't there. And it fucking came
But it's
back.
not, it doesn't happen when he's in like rage mode. It's like when he's like walking around, it's like when he's in rage mode, like it's just like synths,
Yeah.
But when he's not in rage mode, then they're little shell shakers,
Yeah.
Yeah. Not to jump the gun, but it's related to Crime Lords. Did you notice other folks have said about the hints at Crimson Dawn? Yeah, I've heard.
Yeah.
Yeah, where has that happened? I gotta be honest with you, is that when
Crimson
I've seen
Dawn
that,
is basically
I
like,
haven't been motivated enough to go re-listen to what Crimson Dawn's theme is or whatever.
it's like,
is it literally that?
It's
kind
one of those two notes.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where like it might be, but it might just be a few notes.
But that's been in Boba's theme since he
been in everything.
Right. People have been speculating since chapter 1, like Crimson Dawn's going to come in because these 3 notes are in there. Like, to be fair, Crimson Dawn, I'm pretty sure we hear it in solo on like maybe orchestrated in a similar way, like with brass. Maybe brick something. Maybe that's
Maybe.
But it's definitely not enough for me to be on board with it. And if it were an overt reference, I would say that's not a good that's not a very good reference. Like if they were doing that on purpose, that would be kind of like purposely just putting in something that could be nothing, just because they can retroactively say that it was there all along. Like if it's not satisfying if so to me.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, but that's interesting that people are picking up on that as I don't know. There's a point I've been it kind of relates to something I've been wanting to talk about this stream, is that musical cameos, like not just character and people, and we had this awesome Thundercat thing, but like we had the Mandalorian flute thing blatantly play in this score, with no Mandalorian character besides Boba Fett in sight, as a clear device for us as audience viewers to make like when I heard that the first time when in the beginning episode, it's like, why do I know that sound? I had one of those moments. I was like,
it happened when he saw the flares at first, right?
He sees the flare, and then I was like, oh, we can hear this. Maybe we can hear this sound in world. It's just that's the flare. I'm just kidding. But they've all got their sound.
Would definitely not know we're coming.
Yeah, no. But then it's interesting because then at the end of the episode, they're like, "Oh, I know where to find somebody." Do, and it just blatantly just drops. You are gonna get the Mandalorian.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it was like over the head. It's gonna
happen now.
Yeah.
I was like, when they played the Beru, I was like, that's where they'll leave it and they'll go in. But they just like kept playing.
No, they kept going.
In case you missed it.
Yeah.
In case you missed it, the Mandalorian is definitely going to be in the show. And sometimes not to throw shade or be like annoying or whatever, but I've seen other people on the internet be like, "Do you
think that means?" Yeah.
Does that mean? I'm just like,
I've heard that too. I think it's funny.
It's kind of how I feel about that Boba Fett scene in
in
Mandalorian season 1.
I might be wrong, but
okay.
Yeah.
But here's the other thing: is like when he's like, do you remember like what's the word, prompts them to think about him? He's like, oh, you can buy muscle. It's like, I hope you've got better, like more ideas other than just getting Din gets his butt handed to him by like most people Jaren, and I call him like Din gets ganged up on by a pack of Jawas Jaren, to like help you out with your criminal enterprise. It's like he's not really like that much muscle, dude. Like I mean, he's
Yeah,
very like like
that
Uh,
specific
you're gonna need a
tie-in.
lot more than Din Djarin on your team.
yeah,
So
I'm not a huge fan of the fact that this is going to happen. I'm sure it will be cool and I'll be excited. I was
yeah,
excited to hear the theme
yeah,
because, it's programmed into me. But like the more that I thought about it, especially the lines leading up to it, it sort of was like, it's so non-specific. It's one of those also generic things. They could be talking about anyone. And I don't know, just like Din is so, he's so much more special than just like we need some muscle that you can buy.
right.
Like
right.
I think it's just like a vague
Uh,
setup to just it's honestly it's just like a dominant chord to just put before a tonic just because you have to set it up somehow. So
yeah,
let's just set up the character by being like, what can we do that will
Mhm.
necessitate us bringing it?
right.
It
We need some muscle.
yeah.
Yeah, and then drop the theme kind of thing. I'm trying to think of other like real clear examples of like musical hint drops like that.
Or
Yeah.
like overt ones like
It's
that.
kind of like you see it.
Like
The
You see
Force
it in.
Awakens.
overt
Well, you see
ones
it a
like
lot when like Anakin does literally anything like slightly evil in the prequels
Mm.
or in Clone Wars. They go boom 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 boom
totally.
boom. You know.
But that's in knowing that that character is
Yeah,
put
I mean
on
that's not like a
screen.
hint as much as this is. Like that's like
Right.
that is the
But that's
character,
that's
right?
like that's the nature of motifs though, right?
Right.
Totally, but like again, like character that has not appeared, not on scene, that
Yeah. Yeah.
we
It's
have
like
not
not
even
on
mentioned
screen.
his name yet. If you know the theme, you know it's
Yeah.
like saying who should we call, and then the Superman theme just plays in the background, and
It's
then the
so
episode
true.
ends.
That's a really
Like who
fucking
should
point.
who can save us, and then it just plays. We're not hearing it in the real world or in the in world. It's just there. We're just gonna tell the audience, hey, here's the answer. Kind of, it reminded me a
That's
little bit of
really funny.
like Chris Xanthe, you and I, when I was on your mainstream and we were talking about Palpatine's theme appearing in The Last Jedi, and
Yeah.
I made the big controversial statement of like, this is someone in the scoring room trying to drop something on all of us.
No.
Because who would have known? Why drop Palpatine's theme in a movie that we have no clue that Palpatine is
Right.
even coming back yet?
Well, I
Why
don't
would
think
we
that
drop it
Rian
with
Johnson
Snoke
knew that
doing
Palpatine
evil
was going back
things?
either, though.
You know?
but
Right.
but
Well, that's yeah. It's a tricky thing. Well, it's a tricky thing with dropping in themes in that context because, like, in that context, when Rey is being tortured by Snoke, the Emperor symbolizes evil in general. Like the Emperor Snoke, whether or not we knew Snoke was
yeah,
a
it's like
directly
subconscious
descendant of
connection to the to that
Snoke
feeling of
already
like
is Emperor-y and part of like a similar lineage. So that was like one of those things that kind of it's on the it's obviously they didn't know
Yeah.
it was on the fence enough that it didn't really ring any bells. But I think something that is tougher with newer.
I don't
Okay,
know. I stand
See
by.
now,
I
now
stand by
Justin's
it.
under
I
the
stand by it.
fire.
listen to
Now
listen to
stand
that
by it.
episode
I'm
if you
gonna
want
stand
if you want to hear
by
Justin
it.
and I debate this.
So-
I love
On
it.
the
I
other
love half
hand-
of these shows are just me and Justin like getting into fisticuffs with Xanthe.
With
I
me.
love it. Yeah.
No.
I'm just joking. It's
Um,
awesome.
But okay, the problem with not the problem, but like it's harder to do that more subtly in like these new shows because so much of the score is not just the composition, it's also the recording of it. So it's not that just we're hearing like that theme manifested
Right.
some way. It's like the carbon copy recording of it,
Yeah.
the same exact way it's arranged. Like the theme is
So
so much
funny.
more than just what's on the paper.
I gotta say, just I literally can't even think of another example like in film that's done this.
Well, in
I think, like
The Force Awakens, they use a cue. They use the recording from A New Hope when Luke is like when Rey's getting the lightsaber. Like they didn't even re-record it. They used it on purpose from A New Hope soundtrack. Like when Rey draws the lightsaber to her, they use the Force theme.
But this is yeah, but this isn't what this isn't. That's not the same type of thing that's happening here, though.
Oh, you mean like another
not
character?
yeah, like
This is like
like the Superman
referring, like-
version.
it's that's to me more like what you're saying. It's like it's drawing a spiritual connection between these scenes.
Right.
This is literally like Justin's saying. This is a clue that's telling you what will happen later, like to your face. The Mandalorian is coming. You know what I mean? It's like, and there's nothing in the scene, like you said, that's like indicating. I mean, yeah, they're like, I know some muscle. Yeah, I know, but
Yeah,
it's like
they say nothing
but
specifically. That's like could be.
I
that
hear
would
what you're
have to
saying,
be
Justin.
there.
It's very on the nose, and I can't think of something as on the nose. I would love.
Me neither.
I'm sure there are
I can't
examples
think of-
somewhere, but
it's honestly,
just
it's like
made
in
me
a Marvel
really
movie. It's
curious.
like, who can help us? And then like
Right.
Iron Man's theme plays.
That's
you know?
what I'm saying. That's what it felt
But I
like.
can't think. But that doesn't happen in any of the Marvel movies, and that's
It
what I'm saying.
doesn't
It's like,
really.
I
I'm
can't
trying-
think of another example where that ever happens. Like it's kind of like a weird thing to put in. It's like a
Yeah,
first.
Well, yeah, not
now I
exactly in
kinda
that
wanna-
context, but sort of the like we need help and kind of a so excuse for someone else
Right.
that's in our world. Like let's just
Well, it just goes to show how successful that Mandalorian theme is. Like
exactly. That's part
like
of it too.
they nailed it. They nailed that theme in the public consciousness. It does exactly what they wanted it to do, to the point where you can play those 4 notes on the same instrument and everybody knows exactly who you're thinking about. It's just so, in some ways, whether you want to talk about it aesthetically or whatever, whether we like it or anything like that, like it did its job to
yeah,
the point
it
where
did.
they
It's
can
like
just
it's like
they
clicker
go,
training. It's in our
I
head.
mean, heck, even less than that, not even those 4 notes. You just got to have the recorder going, that
right.
little call thing. That's it. That's all you needed. And you were like, Mando,
Yeah,
Um,
they nailed it. They nailed it on that theme, and I'm curious if they'll ever be able to do anything like that with the Book of Boba theme.
I think the Book of
Yeah.
Boba Theme is an earworm as well.
yeah,
Yeah.
I feel
And
like something's
I
gonna
think
happen.
anything is
Just have the voices. Da, 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 da.
Or the next time the ship goes by, you just
They're
hear,
like in
"Ah!"
Ahsoka, and Ahsoka's like, "Who can we ask
Justin.
to help us?" And then you just hear like that dude's voice go, "Da da 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 da."
Okay, I like the Mandalorian theme. I do. But
I
I
do
have
too,
to
by the way.
say I feel really guarded. Like music is like I think one of the most powerful like sensations. I think like sound, I don't know. I can't quote a study, but like basically if you want to like train someone to do what you want or to like be moved a certain way, like music is the tool of manipulation, and using music especially that is repeated so many times and you have no choice but to grow fonder of something that you listen to many times. I don't know, read a book called Hooked. It's like it's wild, like how the biggest determining factor of like whether we like something is just how many times we've heard it. And so like I have no doubt that like even everything, pretty much anything I don't like, if I listen to it enough times, I will start to develop a fondness, not even overtly, but subconsciously, so that such that when it pops up the next time, it feels like, oh yeah, that's familiar, like that's and using like the way sound design manipulates our attention in like apps and so much technology and like and in shows and everything as well. And so to drop something in like this that is so effective and it's like a easy, I don't know, it's because I feel like I know what's happening. Like I'm getting hyped too, and I'm like, damn it, did you have to use the theme on me? And everyone, like, it's going to be hard to see past any logic because you use the theme, so you go directly to like the part of our memory that already loves it. And I don't like that, but I like it in the moment. But on the outside, I hope they don't use that tool too much.
Yeah, I hear you. And by the way, that you just nailed what I was just talking about with putting weird Clone Wars music in there. It's like you do it enough times, and all of a sudden it becomes familiar language of the franchise, right? We'll get there, I think, in some ways with Star Wars and weird music.
Yeah, Matthew.
Matt,
Ending with the
ending with the
Mandalorian
Mandal-
theme is as close as they could get to next time on
Next
Book of
time
Boba Fett.
on Boba Fett.
They did so many. Yeah, they did so many little things that were basically things like that, where it's like, like the back to tank thing. You're not gonna see these flashbacks anymore. Okay,
We're done.
You're gonna see Mandalorian soon. Okay,
twice. We'll put 2 references.
Like
So
I
it's
would have
gonna happen.
preferred if it was just the first one.
Me too.
Or
That first
just to
one?
make it that connecting timeline
I thought
thing.
that's where they're
but
gonna
then-
stop it.
And I thought the first one was cool, frankly. I liked it.
I was fine. It was just enough of a where this
I didn't
was
realize
like
they were literally gonna go into like
Yeah.
I just wanted them to go bo-da-doo-da, bo-da-doo-da-doo, and then that's all they needed. That's all they needed.
And actually hearing the Mando and Boba so close together, I was like, just thinking how similar they are.
Pretty similar.
And Pirates of the Caribbean. Throw in Pirates of the Caribbean.
yes.
But you know, all in all, I have to say that I like this episode in so many ways. I feel like this is, and maybe this is a good thing, or maybe it's not a good thing. But this episode felt like like the spiritual successor to the Mandalorian series, like that I kind of expected the series to kind of be.
Yeah.
I kind of expected this to be like the Mando offshoot show, right? It's like it is kind of the same story, but it's about this one. It's a spinoff. Really, it's a spinoff, right? It's Mandalorian, even though it is the Book of Boba Fett, which is a much like more ubiquitously popular character before Mandalorian ever came around. It still is kind of like a Mandalorian spinoff show, right? Even though it's freaking Boba Fett, right? So in some ways, I expected the show to be more like Mando, and when it wasn't, some of that's kind of where my stuff got a little shaken up with I was like, oh, this is kind of like a lot different than Mando than I expected. There's a lot more campy things in. There's a lot more weird things in it. Whatever we've said. But this episode felt much more like The Mandalorian than any of the episodes so far, both in sound design and in score, and just honestly the like this felt also like that whole scene with the ship and all the stuff in the CGI. Like if this felt more in line with the visual effects that we come to expect for Mandalorian than some of the stuff we've seen before. It like didn't feel like a little bit like they stepped up the visual effects in some ways, like this episode.
Yeah, it felt like an upgrade, and the script felt like an upgrade. Matthew,
Yeah.
that's exactly how I felt, by the way, Matthew. Using the theme felt like a move from marketing rather than just telling the story in the episode.
Yeah. It was kind of weird. But so yeah, I felt like in some ways I would commend the score to be like, we're now connecting the dots to the Mandalorian, and you're hearing the themes play themselves out. You're hearing some of the themes make their way in. You're hearing some of the sound design elements. You're hearing those little jangles from his feet. I think this episode felt like it was like tying itself to that series way more, and I think the score had a lot to do with that. So I would say that they did I feel like they did a good job. And by the way, I should say they, because that's the other surprising thing about the soundtrack that came out is every single track has Ludwig's name on it as well as Joe Shirley's name on it.
Yeah, well, I figured that because it's themes by Ludwig Göransson, so I kind of figured that he made up the main theme.
Okay,
and maybe and maybe Shirley's more of like the one spinning them out.
But there's got to be tracks on this that don't involve that Boba Fett theme.
No, I mean like multiple themes. Like what if?
Do you think that Ludwig had a hand in all those different themes?
I think he probably created like a handful of character themes, and plus, if we're reusing some from Mando, too.
Right. Then he's got to be credited, right?
Ludwig might be spinning, orchestrating. I don't know, but also it could just be a like Lennon McCartney thing where just decide to put both of their names on all of the tracks instead of even though they didn't all write all of them. So I don't know.
I get you. It could possibly.
And
again, more enigmatic information about who scored this show.
Though the unofficial track list, I found like an unofficial track listing somewhere that said Cantina Latina, Robert Rodriguez, Mark Del Castillo, and John Williams. And I've heard a lot of people like say, did John Williams co-write this? Or did John Williams come back and write that Cantina track? And it's just the Cantina song. That's why he's credited. Yeah. It's credited because it's a cover, and that's how you credit the original composer, even though he didn't come back specifically to create this version of it. But yeah, that's the reason John Williams is credited on that, because he wrote Cantina song.
It's the same reason why on Wild Thoughts by Rihanna and DJ Khaled, if you look on Carlos Santana is credited on that song, because that is smooth. That song is basically smooth. It's not that Carlos Santana came in and like helped them write that song. It's that they basically sampled smooth from him and Rob Thomas. So
that'd be awesome if they did an 80s style next time on Batman. The
same Boba Fett channel.
Same Boba time.
Okay, I
same
see
Fett
that on
channel.
episode 3. They don't. David Collins was not involved in episode 3. They didn't have. Is IMDb wrong, or did they not have a sound editor on episode 3? The sound personnel looks bigger on episode 4, and
Did they just
to
forget the
me,
sound people on 3? They're just like, oh crap.
like, I don't know. Is there a sound editor? Because David Collins is listed for episode 4, but not for episode 3.
I hope
Episode
that's a
4 got
mistake.
that David Collins love.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah. Anyway.
David Collins takes a look at episode 3. Is like, you want me to be part?
Yeah.
No thanks.
You did what?
No.
You
I
did
was gonna
what?
say, like, episode 3, they heard the sound. They were like, "Yeah, we shouldn't have cut down our sound
we need
personnel. We'll get David back."
Oh, we're so harsh on the.
No, it's because we love David Collins.
Because we love David.
We do.
Anyway, that's about all I have. Yeah. Any final thoughts?
Yeah. Did I have any other little things?
I'm looking at my notes here.
Anyone in chat have any final thoughts? How you felt about the music and sound?
I thought the sound design for the little scan bot was cool. I loved that little scan bot that Fennec had, the little Android thing that mapped the thing. I thought that design was cool. I didn't understand the lep droid thing, but I thought I thought its voice was really cool. For some reason, it's weird, cutesy, little sad, emotive. Like for a little rat catching droid, it had a lot of personality.
I like they canonized rats.
Yeah,
like you've always seen rats in Jabba's palace from Return of the Jedi, and they literally said it out loud. They're like, "There's rats in here."
No, we saw a lot of them in Bad Batch.
Yeah, that's true. I thought those were cool. Still not like a whole lot of crazy sound design in this show. I mean, a little bit from the modding scene, but the music was so I'm going to say the word distracting from that, but not in a bad way. It was just, more robot arm sounds kind of a thing. But but there
not
hasn't
a lot
been
of
a whole lot
firefights in this show. There's like very rarely times when there's like a lot of like, it was like Fennec shooting up the palace this time around. What other things? Even when Boba was like fighting that biker gang 2 episodes ago, he was like doing it with his own hands. It's like not a lot of blaster action in this show so far.
You got the classic fire spray sounds that we're all familiar with from Attack of the Clones. And of course, I know the seismic charge is now the Wilhelm scream, and then as you said, but it's still one of my favorite Star Wars sounds to date. To date, one of the best ones.
So here's a question I've always wanted to know about that sound. Is like, do people like this? Do people like the sound itself, or do people like the second of silence before the sound? Like what?
It's part of it. It's part of it.
It's part of it.
It's the. It's the total black hole of silence right there.
I think that was a fun moment in Attack of Clones in the theaters back in the day. Yeah. All right. Can I just ask before we wrap up, like who can we, if we had to predict who's going to be in Boba's entourage by the end of this show, like who do you think is showing up? Like if we had to put together a prediction, because obviously Mando is one of them.
Well,
I think he's going to go on like a.
For a second, I think he's going to be there for a second, and then he's going to be like, "Hold on, I got to go find this kid," or I miss my child, and then leave. But we're gonna have Mando, Last Chrysanthemum's now part of it. We're assuming you need a job.
Do you think Bosk is gonna make an appearance in the show?
It's possible.
Be interesting.
I think it'd be possible. I still want to see Han Solo in this show.
Han Solo could be fun.
I think that would be a fun moment if Boba went and found Han Solo to be in his crew.
I mean, I don't think any of them would be fun unless there's
unless there's a reason.
Unless there's a
reason.
It's
just business, right?
Yeah. I mean, I would like to see the families come around. I wanted that Godfather situation to work out for him.
I know. I want to see more of the
maybe
the twins join. Maybe the twins come back and they join Scheid, so we can see some battling huts on like little hover speeders or something.
It's kind of weird how not hard-handed he was about it. He's like, all right, so you don't have to fight with me, but just like don't backstab me, please.
I thought I was asking a lot. I thought he was asking a lot, actually.
What a power move to like have dinner over the Rancor.
Because he's saying, I just asked that you remain neutral, but there's like not really neutrality isn't just neutrality. It's like,
well, I took it as like he's setting them up to fail him so that he can hold it against them. Kind of almost like
it's possible.
He's setting them up to be like, now you're my enemy because you didn't do the one thing I asked you to do, right?
Well, yeah, but I think what he's asking them to do is actually harder than it sounds. But I think you're right that he made it sound more casual than it actually is to set them up.
And
but I do
like,
still think,
yeah,
I do think they're going to fail because it actually is asking kind of a lot, given all their history. It is a lot to remain neutral when you're being asked to do something, because remaining neutral is always perceived as being against whoever the person is asking them is.
Right.
Like if my parents are fighting and I'm like, no, I'm staying neutral, no chance that anyone will think that I'm being neutral.
Yeah. I think that this show, in some ways, like some of the things that I've wanted them to do, which is like make this whole mafia kind of setting a little bit more interesting. I think that's about to happen.
Yeah, I hope so.
Four episodes into the show.
I hope so. So it gives me more of a chance. It gives, like, I understand more of their motivations, at least now, because there's kind of a purpose. And with Fennec staying with Boba, now we know a little bit more. She's kind of making a choice, and the upside we know from being independent contractors. I mean, it's not. It seems like it's going to be great to be independent, but there are so many downsides, like lack of stability and family and the protection, like whatever Boba, offers her, that she, who could get a lot of money as a bounty hunter and is willing to pay twice her bounty and whatever, can leave at any time, like clearly something that Boba is offering, which is not freedom, but it's more protection and stability and, a pal, is something that she needs. Yeah. I relate.
I dig it. Yeah, I mean, I never had a problem with that explanation. I always kind of figured that was the explanation. It's like she obviously sees some value in sticking around, and I'm glad that they confirmed it.
Yeah.
And with these explanations, for a moment, I thought we weren't going to get much, because in the first time they're talking, she's like, "You want to take over a crime family?" And he's just like, "Why not?" And I was like, "Oh, great. Okay, that's our answer. Why not?" But then he goes on later to explain, like,
this
I want to.
Isn't really like a huge conviction, right? He's
I thought that was going to be it for a second. I was like,
and I dig that. I dig that. That's why he's not very good at it, because he hadn't really thought this out very well.
But he's like connected to like people like us have always been mistreated. We've always been used.
Right. Totally.
I've just people's gain.
Which was explained like 15 minutes later. I was just saying when they're first talking, and he's like, "Yeah, why not?" I was like, "Okay, great."
Totally. No, I think that's why we need that explanation so much,
right?
Because otherwise, it's like, who cares? But now we know he's a little unionizer.
For your information, boy.
For your information, boy.
So sorry anybody that watches afterwards for commenting on what will be deleted bot comments that you won't be able to see in the live chat. So I realize terrible content.
Last question comes from Matthew. What will happen with Bo-Katan and the Darksaber from the end of season 2? Will that be addressed?
I can't imagine they'd address it in this show. That seems like a Mandalorian season 3 thing to address.
Yeah. Like, I think.
Yeah. But you're right though, Matthew, in that like we're gonna see. It's kind of like what you said, Justin, when I had brought the idea of singing Omega in the show. It's like, but we haven't seen her story end in Bad Batch. So like, if we see her, that means that we know that she lived. We know that this and this. In some ways, seeing Mando in this show is going to answer some of those questions that we expected to have answered in Mandalorian season 3. So maybe that's a good thing. Maybe they can answer some of those questions for us here, so that Mandalorian season 3 can just start off wherever they want to start it, right? But I assume that the Bo-Katan thing, though. Would you say?
I think Book of Boba Fett season finale is going to end with a coming next Mandalorian season 3.
Yeah.
Mandalorian
and it's going to be some tag with with Mando, yeah. Like, but I can't imagine that Bo-Katan, the whole Darksaber thing. That seems like very much like the story they're about to start telling in Mandalorian season 3.
Yeah,
like,
I would agree with
that's
that.
what I can't imagine they would do any work on telling that story. You know. Yeah, you're right. He just kind of did will Din Djarin sew up with or without the Darksaber. I mean, if he doesn't show up with the Darksaber, then that kind of sets things into motion. Like, what happened to the Darksaber, right?
That would be a very classic Din response to like, what? It's complicated, and that's it. Let's just drop it right there.
And the other thing is, like, is he going to be wearing his helmet all the time? Because assumedly he had broken that barrier at the end of Mando, right? Mm-hmm. But maybe sticking to his guns is what will help him cope with the loss of Grogu, right? Maybe like going really hardcore back into his helmet thing, you know. I don't know. All these things we'll find out. You know. But I can't imagine they're gonna really like dig into that stuff until we get to Mando season 3. So
yeah. On that note, we're more than halfway done, and next week we'll be talking about chapter 5, which hopefully will be so amazing.
Reveal us more.
We'll have so much good script happening. We'll have so many
much good
character motivations happening.
Such good script.
I appreciate your perspectives, Andy. It's definitely helpful. In some of the I don't necessarily have gone to these criticisms immediately until I come and chat with you about them. I guess
I think you're saying a nice thing to me.
I am saying a nice thing to you. I think in some ways I've been a little bit more, what's the word? I like a little bit more love drunk on Star Wars nerd stuff than I and then when we chat on these streams, I'm usually like, oh, actually that's kind of silly, or that's kind of stupid, or whatever. So I try to say, like, in the best way possible that I appreciate
Star nerds.
That I spoil Star Wars.
No, I mean, that's what this.
I'm just kidding.
That's what this is not just like, we love Star Wars. Like, we love it so much, and we're not like, we love the new Star Wars too. Like, we love everything that's been coming out and everything, and so much about it that we all love. But this is not just a like, let's praise everything that they do podcast or show, right? And that's what I appreciate. We're willing to like break things down a little bit more critically, and I appreciate being challenged on those ways every Sunday. So,
well, that's very nice. Thanks, James.
I love watching.
He's like, I'm remaining neutral.
I love watching.
Well, you know what the funny thing is, that Xanthe and I have this. I'm appreciating that we're arguing more and more.
Me too.
Yeah.
I've thought
because
we
when we first started streaming didn't argue nearly as much as we argue in our text messages. We argue way more in our text messages than we ever did on stream. Now we're bringing it to the stream, and it's great. It's great. So,
it means our friendship is growing. We're becoming more.
It
comfortable.
is.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
I'm getting
just to make sure everyone knows, like, mom and dad are fine. Okay,
We're fine. Baby Justin.
I'm there watching, just going.
Wow, that's a weird way to end.
All right,
Baby Justin.
Baby Justin.
Yeah, not to be confused with Baby Bantha, but both very, very both adorable.